So anyways, so I've got these plates. Now I don't like, I'm going to go through my background and how I developed this procedure. But one thing that, there's a lot of people out there that are basically peddling their unproven theories. And so I don't do that kind of stuff if it's something that I know works, because then usually it's stuff that I've done. Okay, like for example, I have sent out, I do aerospace engineering consulting. You saw my business card. I helped design the hydraulic system on the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter. I've been all over the world. I've been across the pond dozens of times. I've been all over Europe. I've been to the Middle East numerous times. I've been to Paris. I was in and out of Paris for 2 years. I've been to all over, like I've been to Spain, I've been to Italy, I've been to Germany, I've been to England, I've been to Brussels, Belgium, Holland, I've been to France, in and out of there all the time. I've been to Switzerland, I've been to England, all over the place. I've been to Hong Kong, I've been to Philippines. I mean, and so the point being is that I've been around the block a couple times. I've served when I was in America. What happened was some guy came up to me, and I might go through this in the video. If I do, I'll go through it quick. But what happened is I started out in 1976 working on airplanes. And airplanes are highly regulated. Okay, everything that goes into an airplane is regulated by the government somehow. Even the fabric has to be burn tested. Okay, so everything is regulated by the government. So you get to know how the law works, right? And I deal with law and regulation all day, every day. And I'm sitting there, I always used to think, well, what if the FAA comes up and asks me a question about something I got to have an answer for? So I always used to have an answer ready. You see what I'm saying? Never did have them come up and ask me, though. Matter of fact, the only time the FAA ever came up to me was when I was doing working at U.S. Airways, handling their landing gear, and they liked what I had. I'll tell you, I built a spreadsheet. I'm pretty good with computers. I started working on or using computers in the early 90s. I went and there's a State Citizen Service Center. Anybody heard of the State Citizen Service Center in California?
Richard McDonald?
Yeah. I got on their website and I downloaded their files. Their BBS. They had a BBS back then. That's when all it was a BBS, right? That was before the internet. And so, anyways, I grew up in Canada. This is where I learned this stuff in the U.S. when I came down here. And I lived in Utah for a while, lived in California, I lived in Arizona, lived in Texas. That's the biggest places I lived when I've been down here. But so as far as I've sent out hundreds of notice and demands, which is what you got there. We're going to talk about how I developed those. And they all had a picture of a plate, not this particular number, but a plate just like this with a different number. And I served it on them. One of the things I'm going to talk about in the video is when I served one on the Pennsylvania Attorney General. Served one of my, it's registered mail, okay? I serve it on them when I'm doing it. I'm serving it on them by registered mail, because registered mail is kept under lock and key, and there's a chain of custody that's kept by the post office. So it's proof of service. And I served one on the Pennsylvania Attorney General, and I basically told him this is the kind of plate I'm going to be driving around with, and I don't have a driver's license. And one of his flunkies sent me a letter back and said, well, if you drive in Pennsylvania without a driver's license, we're going to arrest your butt and take you down and put you in jail. And so what I did was I took their letter and my notice and demand that I'd served on them by registered mail, and I put it together with, I made a criminal complaint, attached it all together as a package, and I sent it to the U.S. Attorney in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I was living in New York at the time. I had a contract in New York, and I do mostly contracts. because I'm not interested in being a slave. Okay, so my best paycheck, well, it wasn't my best paycheck, actually. It was the best paycheck for American Engineering Services. $7,700 for a week, no deductions. So anyways, and it was when I was living in New York, I was serving Pennsylvania Attorney General and all these Attorney Generals and stuff around there, right? And you were asking if I had responses. We'll talk about that. So anyways, I got this response from the Pennsylvania Attorney General, and I went and put it all together as a package, sent it to the Harrisburg U.S. Attorney in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. They sent me a letter back in 2 weeks. I got this letter and said, we've referred this matter to the FBI. And then about 6 months later, I'm looking on the Pennsylvania Attorney General's website, and they have an acting Attorney General. Now, I have no idea if my stuff caused that, but it's amazing how many times I do that kind of stuff and how people all of a sudden disappear. It's amazing. You build a case against them, you got to build a case. You got to have the right stuff in there. You know, it's like Hillary Clinton, okay? Instead of being, what is it, the statute required she had to be grossly negligent, and so they call it extremely careless. So she didn't commit a crime. You didn't use their words. You see what I'm saying? You got to use their words, or it's going to be useless. So anyways, so we'll go through. This is my website right here. It's called sovereigntyinternational.fyi. And I was telling some of the people earlier, this is actually the front page of my website. So if you take the blue pill, you go to Disneyland. Okay, you go back to Disneyland. Or if you want to enter the website, you got to take the red pill. Okay, but and then if you click on this play button, there's the free educational videos, and you'll go to this page right here, and it's not all of them, but most of them. My YouTube videos, I've got over 400 and. This is my YouTube channel. I've got over 445 videos right now. So it'll take you to this page, and it's got the videos organized based on topics. Bar members, international law, banksters, taxes, the Canada Revenue Agency thieves, bought and paid for media, do-it-yourself series, alternative remedies, land, how you can get absolute title on your land. I own several parcels. Not parcels, I'm sorry. Properties. And I don't pay property taxes. Okay? Now, I use structures. So asset protection. Asset protection's under land. But, so I help people set up trusts too. And American Engineering Services on that business card is a limited liability company. I'm just a manager. I'm just an employee. I don't own it. It's owned by a trust. Okay? And another LLC. So there's a partnership. And so I don't own it. I'm just hired to help them out and do things. And they give me compensation for labor. I've got a compensation for labor contract. They pay me silver coins. And if all you've got in your wallet is these Federal Reserve notes, you're a pauper. And at common law, a pauper doesn't have any rights. You got to have this. This is $1. It says $1 right on it. It's the Silver Eagle. Okay?
So
and in fact, huh?
Should we be carrying those?
Unless you want to be a pauper. You should always have, I keep two, because at common law you got to have $2, otherwise you're a pauper. And a pauper at common law doesn't have any rights. So you're sitting there claiming all these common law rights, and yet you're a pauper. You see what I'm saying? So I keep two of them in my, and has anybody ever seen a pound? They have in England a pound sterling, which is their money that they have. Well,
Oh my.
there's a pound.
Wow.
Pass it around, look at it if you like.
That's my dad every day.
It's A troy pound is 12 troy ounces. Okay, so an ounce is 31 grams, 31.7 I think, whereas a regular ounce is 28 grams. So a troy ounce is a little bit heavier, but instead of being 16 ounces to a pound, it's only 12. So anyways, that's a troy pound. So anyways, everything's an illusion. That's one thing I've learned a long time ago. The matrix is real. So what I would suggest is, if you're interested, YouTube, when you go on YouTube, yes, some of my videos will come up recommended, but who knows what YouTube criteria is. They demonetize a lot of my videos, and so matter of fact, the best ones, this is my YouTube channel, most viewed is void judgments, and it's demonetized. It's got 64,000 hits. It's demonetized.
What does demonetize mean?
Means it's limited or no ads. I put ads in my videos. That's how I make a buck. Matter of fact, if you go here, this says that right now my estimated revenue is 195 bucks for a month. That's in the last 28 days. So I don't make a lot of money off it, but you know, I get people contacting me. I've been out of work for 7 years, so the only way I really make any money is with my YouTube channel, with and people contacting me. And then I have a friend of mine in Texas that buys and sells cell phones all day long. He's got hundreds of cell phones. He used to have a chain of stores in the DFW area. He used to have 30 stores in the DFW area. He used to have stores in New York and Florida and California. And he shut them all down because there's no margin in cell phones anymore. And so, but he still buys and sells cell phones all day long in New York, or in DFW area. And I help him with that. So I basically run his errands for him and help him on the weekends. It was the only day that he can actually work because he's a caregiver for his 8-year-old mother. And so the only day he can work is on weekends. And so I help him with that. But the bottom line is that if you ever need a good deal on a cell phone, I mean, nobody sells them that I know about cheaper than he does. He has used and new and all that stuff. So iPhones, he's got iPhone 11s. Anyways, so these are my plates, and I guess what my point is that I use these plates. And I've been driving around since, for about 9 months with that plate on my car in Texas. And I can't tell you how many times I've had cops. Usually they don't even follow me. Usually they'll just like cruise right on past me. I was cruising down the freeway one time in the slow lane, and there was a Texas State Police. That was 2 of them, right, one behind the other, getting on, and one of them wound on in front of me, and one of them was right behind me, and they both just merged into traffic and took off. And so. So, I mean, I don't have, and you know, it's amazing, it's kind of scary when you first do it, but I sent out hundreds of these things, and so, you know, it came down to, I just didn't want to pay. They wanted 600 bucks in tax, because I had to buy this car, and so they wanted, and so I just didn't have the 600 bucks, and so I just put my own private plate on there, and I've been serving them notice for years. I just never done it. So, that's what I use. So anyways, so let's go to my the video. Oh, I don't know how many of you, did any of you do cryptos? Bitcoin or anything like that?
He started an account.
Okay, well, one of the things that I always tell people is the exchanges. Most people buy their coins on exchanges. You can buy your coins with ATMs. There's a lot of ways you can buy your coins. You can get them on Craigslist. You know. Anyways, the point being is that if you buy them on a exchange, I used to have cryptos on Cryptopia, which is an exchange in New Zealand, and they went bankrupt. They claimed they got hacked. Well, I don't think that's what happened. I think that they just, well, I'll show you. This is, they went into bankruptcy because they claimed they got hacked. This is a letter from their their receiver in bankruptcy, which is Grant Thornton in New Zealand, dated the 25th of October 2019. It says here, we appreciate the customers wonder why it's taken so long for us to determine customer holdings, and there are two main reasons for the time and the complexity of the process. Number one, customers did not have individual wallets, and it's impossible to determine individual ownership using just the keys in the wallets. While Cryptolia held details of customer holdings and reported these on the exchange, the crypto assets themselves were pooled, commingled, is what they say. And that's exactly what they do, and that's why you never ever want to keep it on an exchange, because, you know, there's an exchange in Delaware called Poloniex. Well, it's owned by Goldman Sachs. Okay, so the bankster thieves are doing exactly what they've always done. Okay, they're taking those cryptos and they're leveraging them. And what happens is, if there's a big move in the cryptos and their books don't balance, or they don't have enough to cover, maybe somebody wants to take some out or something more than they've got, well, then they say, oh, we've been hacked. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Don't ever keep them on a exchange. That's the absolute worst thing you can do. It's like keeping your money in the bank.
What's the alternative?
Private wallet.
Private wallet. Such as?
There's all sorts of them.
Okay.
I got private wallets. This is a lot of people use a Trezor or something like that. This is my private wallet. This is actually an AT&T phone that's active, but I leave it turned off all the time. So you could also call it cold storage. But really, if you think about it, you know, with cryptos, you don't keep anything in your wallet, okay? All your wallet has is the keys and the information, okay? Because I could drop this phone in a bucket of water and it wouldn't matter. Because all I have to do is get another phone, download that app, put in the password for that app, and make sure restore that wallet, and it would all be there still, because really those cryptos are kept in the blockchain, online, on millions of computers all over the planet. And they'll never be in this wallet. And as long as I keep my private keys somewhere safe, I'll always be able to recover that. I could drop that thing in a wallet, in a bucket of water, and it wouldn't matter at all. So again, it's knowing what's happening and how to do it. And I've actually done that. I didn't drop it in a bucket of water, but I changed phones. And so I figured, well, I'm going to try and see what happens. So I just restored the wallet as if I had dropped the phone in a bucket of water. It came back no problem. It's all there. And then I reset the phone and wiped everything out on the phone. Anyways, so that's probably the most important thing that you can know, is don't ever keep your money on a exchange as far as cryptos are concerned. So let's go to this presentation.
All right. I'm going to pause it. Okay.
Why are you pausing it?
I just paused it so we keep them in segments.
Oh, okay. Well, I can.
I forgot that you can cut them, but I can't.
Oh, okay. Well,
Okay. I'm going to pause that. Stupid.
Okay, asserting sovereignty. So this is how that, if you want, just give me an email address, I'll email you that document. Okay, but another thing you have to do also, and I forgot to give it to you. No, I sent it to you. It's a corporate denial affidavit. You got to do that too. Print that if you could.
Print it right now?
It'd be a good idea. Everybody could see it. Really, all this is corporate law. Okay? And so, corporations don't have any rights. That's why they're treating you like a slave. So you can tell them you're a man and basically lay the foundation, defeat their presumptions, because everything's under martial law. They presume certain things. You can defeat all that, but you got to do it before they ever see you on the radar. That's the most powerful thing you can do. I can't tell you how many times I've had people removed, or I think I have. I can't say for sure. But it's amazing how everything changes when you start bringing this stuff up. Now, if they do attack you and you start bringing this stuff up, they're never ever going to admit you're right, okay? Because it would be the same thing as saying, oh yeah, I'm guilty of treason, I'm guilty of multiple felonies. You see what I'm saying? They're not going to admit that stuff. But they'll probably come up with some way why all of a sudden we're going to drop the charges here or dismiss it or something like that. See what I'm saying? So, this is my presentation. I've got this on YouTube. There's a couple of them actually. It's called Asserting Sovereignty, and it's basically how I developed this. Actually, and in all fairness, this is actually Rice McLeod's material, okay? And I just kind of tweaked it and adjusted it. And Rice McLeod with the Republic of Texas, okay? And he's dead now, but it's really stuff that he developed. And the original notice and demand that he did was probably about 6 or 8 pages is all it was. Well, if you look at that one, it's like about 30 pages. And it can actually be thinned down.
You want to look at it? I can't
That's
say
the corporate denial affidavit. There's other things that I've done, but I think they were a mistake. In other words, the secured party creditor stuff, I wouldn't do that again. And the reason is that it's commercial, and you're basically talking out of both sides of your mouth. And the judge is going to see that, and he's going to see that you don't know what you're talking about. You know, you sit there and say, I want common law, and I'm the secured party creditor. Well, secured party creditor, those are words out of the Uniform Commercial Code.
Sure.
So, Uniform Commercial Code is UN. Okay, that's called private law under Unidroit. That's the UN. And so, if you do get some semblance of common law, it's not going to be really common law. You know what I mean? It's not going to be common law of England. You know, there's different common law can mean a lot of different things, depending on the context that you're putting it in. Because there's the common law of England, okay? If the real common law that we're talking about is the common law of England, which is 800 years of jury trial decisions. That's the real common law that we want. But common law is just court cases, is the rulings of courts. And so there's a common law of the federal courts. You see what I'm saying? And there's a common law of this and a common law of that. And so again, it depends on what you're using it. And then there's a friend of mine that taught me court work that says that common law is not Christian. And when you think of the common law in the federal courts, yes, you're right, it's not Christian. Okay, but the common law of England is. And but that's because the people that made the rulings were Christian over 800 years. But so again, so you got to know what they're talking about. And so anyways, this presentation, I don't know, you guys can see all this. I'm in the way. You guys back there might not be able to see it, but anyways, it's called Asserting Sovereignty. First of all, I'm not a liar. Well, I meant a lawyer. No, I meant a liar. All lawyers are liars, right? They're bar members, certainly. You should never take my word for anything. You should always do your own research. I provided references to aid you in your research, but I don't know everything, and I'm open to ideas. There's 4 types of people in the world you'll meet. There's people who try to wake up the slaves. There's the slave masters. There's the people who have no idea they're slaves. And there's the people who like being slaves. Which one are you? Do you really know for sure? Are you who you think you are? This is from The Matrix. I don't know how many of you saw the movie The Matrix, but it is so true. Anyways, if you can see through the illusion, then you are the solution. If the people don't know their basic rights and freedoms, then how can they possibly know when or if their rights and freedoms are being infringed? I can't tell you how many times in Texas You know, I've seen so many indictments in Texas, and I've seen like one that might have qualified for a real indictment. I'm telling you. And so that's what I'd be looking for is where's the indictment? I want to see that indictment. There's a friend of mine in Texas, and these are laminated sheets that I use in Texas. Where is it? Class C misdemeanors in Texas. A crime in Texas is a misdemeanor punishable by jail or a felony under the Texas Government Code. I got that on this one. And a Class C misdemeanor is only punishable by fine only. So then a Class C misdemeanor is not a crime. And in order for that cop to stop you, like a traffic offense, okay, if it's not listed under crimes, and Arkansas has, I was there looking at it earlier. Oh, shoot, I must have gone off that page. I must have, yep. Anyways, Arkansas has in their statutes I think it's called crimes, or criminal code and crimes, or something like that. It's like, well, let's go there. Arkansas statutes. This is the Arkansas website. Well, it looks like it's Lexus.
Talking about Title V criminal offenses?
Yeah, right.
Right.
If it's not listed in there, then it's not a crime. And traffic stuff is probably listed under
Title VI?
transportation. Title 27.
Oh, over there, okay.
I'll bet you it's not a crime. If it's not a crime, probable cause. There's a thing called probable cause. And I use this, I put this in my videos.
That's right.
Article 4 of the amendment prohibits law enforcement officers from arresting citizens without probable cause. Fourth Amendment, that's a violation of the Fourth Amendment. Arrest made without probable cause violates the Fourth Amendment. Holding involuntary civil confinement is a massive curtailment of liberty and is tantamount to the infringement of being arrested and can be made only upon probable cause. The test for a police officer's sufficient basis for probable cause is, did the officer have a sufficient base to make a practical common sense decision that a fair probability of crime existed? Once the officer's actions fail to satisfy this test, it may appear that no reasonably objective officer could have believed that probable cause existed to make an arrest. If there's no crime, then they don't have probable cause. And the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, citing cases from the U.S. Supreme Court, the 5th, 7th, 8th, and 9th Circuits, held that by definition, probable cause to arrest can only exist in relation to criminal conduct. Civil disputes cannot give rise to probable cause. And so if it's a fine only, it's only a civil dispute. So that cop stops you, and in Texas, there's a thing called abuse of official capacity. A public servant commits an offense if with intent to obtain a benefit, with intent to harm or defraud another, intentionally or knowingly misuses government property, services, personnel, or any other thing of value belonging to the government that has come into the public servant's custody or possession by virtue of the public servant's office or employment. Well, think about it. He turned on his emergency lights. Okay? Well, emergency lights, there has to be an emergency.
It's a false
If
alarm.
there's no crime, then it's not an emergency. Revenue is not an emergency.
Isn't that
It's
a
a
crime in
felony.
itself?
It's a felony.
That's a crime in Texas for him to turn on his emergency lights when it's not a crime.
When there's no
That's
emergency.
abuse of official
Yeah,
No
capacity.
emergency exists.
Yes, it's a felony.
And I don't know about Arkansas, but it's probably the same in Arkansas.
Well,
he's
it's
not-
full faith and credit in every state. If one state has a law, you can declare full faith and credit, and it applies to every state.
So there you go. So So then there's also in Texas there's a thing called official oppression. Okay, a person commits an offense if he intentionally refuses. No, that's not it. A public servant acting under the color of his office or employment commits an offense if he intentionally subjects another to mistreatment or arrest, detention, search, seizure, dispossession, assessment, or lien that he knows is unlawful. Intentionally denies or impedes another in the exercise or enjoyment of any right, privilege, power, or immunity, knowing his conduct is unlawful, or, for purposes of this section, a public servant acts under the color of his office or employment if he acts or purports to act in an official capacity, or takes advantage of such actual or purported official capacity. If that cop is coming up to you in a police uniform and he's got his emergency lights going and he's arresting you for speeding, which is not a crime, then he's engaged in official abuse of official capacity. And that's a felony in Texas. So again, it's, you know, what happens, and we all know everything's under martial law. Well, under martial law, it supersedes and replaces common law, okay? And so then there's no common law. Common law offenses, they have to put them down as codes, right? So they have to make codes for murder, common law offenses like murder, assault, kidnapping. They have to make codes for that stuff. And so they make literally millions of codes, rules, and regulations. And so then the burden's on you to keep up to all that stuff. That's what's so diabolically evil about martial law. Okay?
And code is Babylonian law.
Yes, exactly. But it's martial law everywhere. Okay? Under the Libre Code, Article 1 of the Libre Code says the physical presence of the army declares its martial law. Article 2 says that the martial law does not end until there's a specific mention in a treaty of peace. Well, there was no treaty of peace with Arkansas or the Confederacy.
No, it never
All
ended.
there was a ceasefire.
It never ended.
That's right.
We're still under martial law since the Civil War.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Under occupation.
Absolutely. It's a military occupation. And that's why they all wear military uniforms, military rank structures. Why in Texas, it's just about every day they're killing somebody. You know, don't get me going. You're going to get me going here.
If you look in the procedures about the district courts they have in Arkansas, they're in conjunction with the U.S. District Court.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. So again, it's all martial law. And so this is not a judge, okay? And that's another thing. It's called impersonating a public servant. Oh, here's a good one. Here's a good one. Malicious prosecution. Remember, they have to have probable cause to stop you. And if they don't have probable cause, although probable cause may not be inferred from malice, malice may be inferred from lack of probable cause. So if they're assaulting you with their speeding ticket, that's a malicious prosecution. Okay? So you can turn it on their head. And false arrest. So you have to sue them is what you have to do. Okay? Because here's what the courts are saying. The only thing the plaintiff needs to do is allege a false arrest. To allege a false arrest is either A, that the defendant made an arrest or an imprisonment, or B, that the defendant affirmatively instigated, encouraged, incited, or caused the arrest or imprisonment. And that's Burlington versus Josephson. Or when the plaintiff has shown that he was arrested, imprisoned, or restrained of his liberty by the defendant, the law presumes it to be unlawful. He's got to prove it was a lawful arrest. So again, you have to sue him. Remember, they said when the plaintiff does, you got to file a lawsuit. It's the only way.
So does that apply to judges?
Sorry?
Does that apply to judges who are...
With judges, what happens is, let me find it. Impersonation. What happens is an officer who acts in violation of the Constitution ceases to represent the government. You have to understand that. Okay? So that judge is denying you due process. Okay? He's in bad behavior. Okay? Remember, in the Constitution, it says the judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court and such inferior courts as Congress from time to time ordain and establish. The judges both of the Supreme and inferior courts shall hold their offices during good behavior. This is stuff I got from Tom, and it's brilliant. And so, fraud upon the court is fraud which is directed to the judicial machinery itself, and it's not fraud between the parties or fraudulent documents, false statements, or perjury. It's where the court or a member is corrupted or influence is attempted, or where the judge has not performed his judicial function. In other words, the impartial functions of the court have been directly corrupted. And so it's a fundamental right of a party to have a neutral and detached judge preside over judicial proceedings. If he is practicing law from the bench, he's talking to the prosecutor and getting permission for things, okay, he's not a judge. He's in bad behavior, okay? And it's fraud upon the court, and what happens is they lose subject matter jurisdiction when they do that, okay? But it's more than that, it's impersonation, okay? And this is under Texas statutes. And there's every state that I've been in has similar stuff, okay? Impersonation. A person commits an offense if he impersonates a public servant with intent to induce another to submit to his pretended official authority or to rely on his pretended official acts, or knowingly purports to exercise any function of a public servant or of a public office, including that of a judge in court. And the position or office through which he purports to exercise a function of the public servant or public office has no lawful existence under the Constitution or laws of the state or of the United States. And an offense under this section is a felony of the 3rd degree. And so, and in fact, you can go, let's go to the State Commission. This is in Texas. On judicial. Well, I can pass these around if you want to look at them.
Well, I'll just make copies of them, and so that people can see it when they ask for it. That's all right with you?
Oh, that's fine. Whatever.
What about the timeliness of arraignments? Like in Arkansas, you won't get arraigned to maybe a month after.
Oh, they always violate that.
Right.
You know, really, and there's a friend of mine that I work closely with. He goes and he's always in the courts, and I help him, and so we're always sharing information, okay? Matter of fact, if it was up to him, he's the guy that's the caregiver for his 8-year-old mother, so he can't get away all the time. But if it was up to him, he'd be sitting outside the courtroom saying, with stuff like this, saying, you know that this is a malicious prosecution. As a matter of fact, he's been thrown out of there on numerous occasions, okay? So he loves doing this stuff. He's right along in the line with. Anyways, they're always in Texas. I don't know about Arkansas, okay? In Texas, if it's a misdemeanor, they got 90 days to go to trial. They never do it.
Right.
And a felony has to be 180 days. Never do that either. But what they'll do is they'll assault you with their liar, okay, which by the way is a star chamber, okay? They assault you with their liar, and then the liar continues it, and that just throws it all out the window, okay? So then you got to go from the last continuance of the liar, and so you're kind of screwed then, okay? Once you have a liar, the liar gives them jurisdiction. Okay, that's why it's a star chamber is what it is, and you have to understand that. Okay, a star chamber. Let me find that. See, we're not getting too far on my little presentation here, are we?
Yeah, I think we're going.
That's when the king would have his own private little quarter star chamber, right?
Well, that's where what Tom is doing is useful. Okay, he's doing another court. Okay, or common law courts. You have to be careful about that, though, and that's why I like what Tom's doing, because it's statutory. So they can't say that this is illegal. It's pursuant to a statute.
In Arkansas, the arraignment might happen a month after you get arrested.
Well, that's the arraignment.
Right.
Okay, that's not the actual trial. They have to go to trial within 90 days, and you can delay it too.
But they never present you with paperwork here. Even in Texas, they do that.
What you do. And I was in jail one time, and they actually, in Texas, you don't necessarily always get taken to a judge, but this time they did. And I went to the judge, and I started dumping on him. I told him, this is a malicious prosecution, you're engaged in official oppression, I demand to be released now, and I'm going to sue your butt off. I've been to the Supreme Court 5 times, and you're next. And and he kind of looked at me. But then there was a bailiff in there, and he didn't do anything to stop me either. Anyways, so what happened was, he says, well, I guess I'll just enter a plea for you. And then, and I said, no, you're not. I don't give you permission. And when it was all done and I was leaving, he said, you're going to have to show up to enter a plea. So again, you got to stand your ground, and you got to put him in his place. And he's not a judge. Okay, he's a bought and paid for a clerk, masquerading as a judge, and there's court cases that talk about it. And so you don't want to call him that, because he'll threaten you with contempt, although you can ask him, well, is this civil contempt or criminal contempt? Because if it's civil contempt, where's the contract? And it's always civil, okay? But some of them are, you know, they can be real hard asses about that stuff, and the best thing to do is don't let it get to that point, okay? And another thing about contempt is you can always beg forgiveness, okay? That's admiralty, and it's equity. And so, you know, you can always beg forgiveness. And you know, gee, I wasn't intending to be in contempt of court. That wasn't my intent. And
Parlay with the captain of the ship.
yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
That's the equity.
But you don't, you know. But still, the bottom line is that I started dumping on him right off the bat. I was cutting him off. I wasn't letting him say anything. I was telling him this is a malicious prosecution. You're engaged in official oppression. You know, et cetera, et cetera. And I started, you know, because I happen to know a little bit about this stuff, you know, and I demanded that I be released. I didn't get released, but it ain't over, okay? I've been, like I told you, I've been to the Supreme Court 5 times, and he's next. I'm preparing something nice for him right now, but it's going to take time. It takes time to put together a lawsuit, and then I got to get it filed and all the rest of it. But so, anyways, what was I looking for?
Star chambers.
Right.
While you're looking for that, do you make these available? These
are available. I sell one plate.
No, not okay. The plates I was talking about. These magnets.
I sell one plate and one laminated sheet for $50. But quite frankly, you know, if you're here, I'd probably give you one of each of the laminated sheets and a plate for $50 if you want one. But this is a one-time deal that's available here. But people order them from me all the time, and you know, and a lot of times I'll throw in another laminated sheet. A lot of it depends on where they're at, because Texas codes are not going to help much in another state. You know what I mean? Although it gives you an idea of what to look for, and you can make your own up. You know, it's not that hard. It's just a laminated thing that you go to Office Place and get them to laminate it for you. But and I just printed on both sides of the paper, so it's not 2 sheets either. It's 1 sheet that I printed on both sides. But at any rate, yeah, they're available.
Do you carry anything other than, not a license, but any type of cards? Or
well, in Texas, there's a Republic of Texas, right? And I'm a senator. So I've got Republic of Texas ID. I'll pass that around if you want to look at it. I also have his ID. And I have a common law ID that I use, you know. And no, never do they have a birth date. And if they want a birth date, I tell them it's none of their damn business. It isn't, is it? You see what I'm saying?
Just who you are is what them.
It's none of their damn business. And in Texas, they always come out with this failure to identify penal code section, right?
Yeah.
Well, I happen to have that here, so let's read that and see what it says. A person commits an offense if he intentionally refuses to give his name, residence, address, or date of birth to a peace officer who has lawfully arrested the person. And so, first of all, you're engaged in this is a malicious prosecution. There's no crime. You're engaged in false arrest. I'm going to sue your butt off. And so there's no lawful arrest. And you're not a peace officer. You're a revenue officer. And you're in your private capacity. And, you know, anyways, don't get me going.
You know, what's funny is, like, if you look in the laws of, like, New York, a peace officer is only in Westchester County and the sheriff of Nassau County, New York. Nowhere else in New York is there a peace officer.
Well, they have, in some states, they have a certificate of, it's a certificate of something as a peace officer. Certificate of, some states. Boris talked about that. and he was in court, and he had this guy messing with him at this court, and he said, "Can I see your certificate of status as a peace officer?" I can't remember status, or it was a certificate. You see what I'm saying? And the cop, he was chasing him down the street, wanting to write down information, and as soon as he said that, he flipped his book shut. He said, "Nope, sorry, have a nice day."
Like a delegation of authority or something along that line?
Certificate of, it's like a training certificate showing that he is certified to be a peace officer. Your certification as a peace officer. You see what I'm saying? Can I see your certification as a peace officer?
Can't you also ask them if they have a bar card? Because if they're making legal determinations, only lawyers and attorneys can make illegal determinations, can't they? And if they don't have a bar card, then they're not supposed to be doing that anyways.
Well, that's true, and that's not a bad question to ask them for sure.
Well, the
But
bar card doesn't mean that they're an attorney. The
Right,
bar
but
card
they're
means
making
that they're an
legal
imposter.
Right. But if they don't have a bar card, then they can't be making legal determinations.
They can't make a legal determination if they have a bar card.
Right. Well, yeah, exactly. But they
Period.
don't.
Bar card is nothing but a foreign identification of a foreign military
So that wouldn't work.
agent of the crown.
British Accreditation Registry.
Okay, so
A
that
bank
wouldn't-
authorized representative.
Association.
London Bank.
So when you have this idea of the Republic of Texas and all that stuff, when you travel
I like that.
abroad,
Mushrooms
what
were
do you
good
do?
to you in the 60s, wasn't it?
well, I haven't done it in a while. I'll have to get a passport.
So you don't have a passport currently.
Right now, it's expired, and I haven't had one in some time. I want to. I do my Northeast information, private information share, and one of the things that we talked about, and it wasn't something that, and this is the thing I like about doing these things, is because, I don't know everything, and there's guys that bring up stuff. And there was a guy that brought up stuff at the Northeast private information share this last time about this law professor by the name of Rivera, who is in California, and he was studying his material, and this law professor brings up the fact that you got to study the Constitution, the Articles of Confederation, the Declaration of Independence, and the Northwest Ordinance all together, and they all work together. And in fact, and this Rivera got disbarred when he started bringing that stuff up. So that tells me that he must have been onto something.
So
You know what I mean?
Eduardo Rivera
yeah.
was a California attorney that was disbarred, and he said the only thing that applies to men and women are the Articles of Confederation and Declaration. That applies to public servants is the Northwest Ordinance and the Constitution. I've got all of Eduardo Rivera's information, every last bit of it that he put out in public. So.
Well, and he's got some really interesting stuff. Like, for example, in Article 4 of the Articles of Confederation, it talks about the free inhabitants shall have all the rights and privileges of citizens in the states. And so, I mean, why would you want to be a citizen if you can just be a free inhabitant? You know what I mean? And that's why they can't mess with the so-called illegal aliens, because and that's why they have to give them the freebies too. Okay, that's why they have to give them all this free health care and this free housing, because that's all of a sudden now they got them in a contract. There's a Supreme Court case from like 1875. It was the 1800s. But anyways, it's Carlisle versus United States. But this is the Star Chamber one. We'll find that one in a second. The corrupt Star Chamber courts of England required defendants to have counsel. Star Chamber stood for swiftness and arbitrary power. It's a limitation on the common law, and that's Ferretta versus California, the U.S. Supreme Court, 422 U.S. 806. And so, again, that's, if they're assaulting you with a liar, that's the first thing that should come out of your mouth. So this is a Star Chamber then, is that correct? You know what I mean? And let them tell you, oh yeah, this is a Star Chamber. And get that on the record. You know what I mean? I bet you they're not going to want to go there. I'll bet you. And then if you understand, let's see here. Oh, here, right here. In propria persona. This is actually Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. We talked about that versus Bouvier's. Bouvier's a better one. But at any rate, this is in propria persona, ends one's own proper person. It is a rule in pleading that pleas to jurisdiction of the court must be pled in propria persona, because if pleaded by attorney, they admit the jurisdiction. As an attorney is an officer of the court, he is presumed to plead after having obtained leave, which admits the jurisdiction. So if you want to challenge jurisdiction, you got to do it by yourself. You cannot have an attorney. And so if they're assaulting you with this liar, it's a star chamber, and they're assaulting you with their jurisdiction. And so that's why you can appeal it on you can challenge it on appeal, because again, if they're doing that, that's a denial of due process. They lose subject matter jurisdiction. You see what I'm saying? But they're going to railroad you. They're going to play their little games, and that's why what I do is I'll file it into the case. You know, I won't even say it in there. I'll just file it into the case. I may not even show up, but I'll certainly file it into the case and call the judge a bought and paid for clerk masquerading as a judge, and he's impersonating. And then I'll file. That was another thing I was going to do. State Commission on Judicial Conduct, Texas. I've been filing judicial complaints too. I filed some disciplinary actions. This is in Texas, of course. Suspensions. Of course, this was August the 20th, pending criminal matter. This Justice of the Peace, Precinct 4 in Van Horn, Culberson County, Texas. She was suspended pending criminal matter. So they're going after, the Judicial Council's going after her. And then this other one, Megan Nicole Grigsby, Justice of the Peace, it was suspended pending criminal matter. Okay, and then there's in 2018 there was a Williamson County judge that was pending criminal matter, but the suspension was lifted with dismissal of the criminal matter. So you know, they go after these judges, and so that's where one of your remedies is available, is through the Judicial Council. You got to bring up the right issues, and the right issues is that it's a malicious prosecution. It's not a crime. You see what I'm saying? And they assaulted me, and et cetera, and this judge is helping them, and that kind of thing. You see what I'm saying? And you know, that's where I would go with it. And you file it with the council, but now, you know, it takes time to go through all that, and so then what happens is that what I did, like with Colleyville in Texas, is I filed 3 different criminal complaints against them, 3 complaints with the Judicial Council, because I filed one, and then they did something that just give me evidence against them. And that's what they do, right? They give you evidence. So, I mean, why not use it against them, right? They're going to use evidence against you, use it against them. So I went and got their new evidence that they gave me, and I filed another complaint, and this is further evidence of their bought and paid for clerk masquerading as a judge, and they're engaging in mail fraud by sending these solicitations through the mail with these threats, and they're, you know, et cetera, et cetera. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, do you anything like an insurance or bonds and anything like that?
No, well, in Texas, what they do is they have an association of cities and stuff like that, so they insure each other. So you got to sue them, basically.
No, I mean, like for your automobiles.
Oh, I have insurance always.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because I want to make sure that if something happens, somebody that they're covered, and I can get my vehicle. And plus, I have a lien on the vehicle, so I mean the insurance company or the lien holder requires it, and so I want to make sure they're covered, and then I want to make sure that, you know, hopefully I can get another vehicle if I get in an accident. You know what I mean? And so you know, I have full coverage for sure. Yeah, comprehensive, all that stuff.
Judicial what?
Huh?
Judicial complaint.
Judicial Council, State Commission on Judicial Conduct.
They're called in different things in different states.
Yes, they are. And but in Texas, I can tell you, there's a code of judicial conduct.
I used to write
It's in-
them all the time.
Is that right?
In New York.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
There's
and they have a New York, a State Commission on Judicial
Yeah,
Conduct
they
in
do.
New York
And
too.
against lawyers too.
Oh yeah, I'll bet.
Yeah.
And
It's
but
in every
again,
state.
if you don't, not necessarily New Jersey.
Canon of judicial conduct is what
My
they're really
number
under.
is XYZ.
It could be,
Yeah.
but the point is that you can, you never know what's going to hit, you know. So you just, it's like throwing mud against a wall. You never know what's going to stick. You know what I mean? So just hit them with everything you can, and you know, and if enough people do that stuff, and this is one thing it says on this website is that is judges that repeat and that engage in repeated conduct, they go after them criminally. You know what I mean? So what they do, if you look here, what they do is, these are disciplinary actions, but so they do public sanctions, they do private sanctions, and so they probably you know, if it's a one time, they maybe sanction them, and it might be public or private. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But if they continually do that stuff, you know, then they're gonna give them some free room and board in Corber Hotel.
They privately sanction them. You know.
Oh, yeah.
The one judge, he once after that term, he was off the bench.
Right. A lot of times,
Or
maybe
not
they
even a
decide,
judge.
maybe they decide they don't want to run for office anymore.
Yeah, really.
And that's when I filed my lawsuit. I always sue the judge. You know, of course they're going to get it dismissed, but I guarantee you, they're reading that thing, and they know what's going on, and you know, shit rolls downhill.
That's what I do. I sue the judge, the court clerk,
Right.
the officer,
It's
everybody.
It's throwing mud against the wall. You never know what's going to stick.
So
You know,
if they
the sheriff.
dismiss it,
Yeah.
can you not
Well,
appeal?
If you're in
Sorry?
the jail system.
Can you not appeal if they dismiss it?
Oh yeah, yeah. And the last time I filed a lawsuit in Texas, I did appeal it, and they wanted like $1,800 to go to the Court of Appeals, and I've been out of work for 7 years, and so, you know, I didn't. But
You
actually,
can do it in the form of paupers, could you?
oh no, I'm
Like
well.
in
First of all,
jurisdiction.
a pauper is that's equity. You're appealing to equity. Okay, so I might do but what I'll do is I'll tell them that your filing fees don't apply to me because I'm not a corporation. I'm a man, and they still dismiss it. But I'm not going to go and beg. Sorry.
He had the same issue.
Yeah, I understand. I'm not going to go and beg, you know. And what I did though is I filed judicial complaints against them because they're again what it is they're converting a right into a privilege. Okay, because it's a license fee. Okay, there's two kinds of licenses. Matter of fact, let me go back to this document here.
Hey, in America, justice is now not for free anymore. You have to pay for justice with the filing fees.
Since when?
Well, it's not America. Those guys are not America.
Thank you very much. I stand corrected.
They're
I said
Columbia.
corrected.
Yeah, and communist.
Washington, District of Columbia.
The Babylonians.
That's right. DC's not a part of our country.
They're forcing
Yeah,
the
you're in
Vatican
D.C. is what you are.
Yeah.
because of the papacy is Babylon too.
Yeah.
Can, for example,
I want to
with,
be an
with
AC.
Randy John, when he went to jail, we're all going to file complaints against the judge.
Uh-huh.
Is that a good idea, or does he need to do that as well?
I would, if you witnessed, yeah, but you got to
Well,
witness
we
it.
didn't get this.
Well, you can witness what's online because their acts are already online. Everything you need to know about the egregious acts.
If
are-
you can get it online, then what I would do is I'd print it off online, and I'd specify this was available online, and the evidence is right here, and then I'd file a complaint.
That's what I did.
But the more physical witnesses that are there, you know, if you're there when the show trial's happening and the judge is doing that stuff, yeah, definitely, it's better to have witnesses. You know, I've heard of cases. Grand jury is really, really powerful, and he's up on that stuff. But you can. I've heard of times when 26 people will go in and witness some guy, and the judge will get up and leave. Okay, because that's a grand jury, and they can hand down an indictment, a true bill, and that judge is done.
That's why everybody should take 26 people to court with them.
Well, yeah, but trying to find 26 people that are going
Who have
to
brains.
who gets that kind of support? You know what I mean?
David Straight does.
Yeah, maybe. Well, I don't know.
I don't know about that.
At any rate, there's a court case. Or it's not a court case. It's a law dictionary definition, and I'm trying to find it. It's not in this document. This is a criminal complaint I did against Jeff Sessions, and I sent a copy to Trump, and then Trump started coming out bad-mouthing Jeff Sessions. Serious, but. Whether it was because of what I did or not, who knows? You know, you don't ever have proof of that stuff. But it's amazing how many times that kind of stuff happens. Let's go back to this presentation.
You were saying something about something in the law dictionary? What were you talking
Yeah, I think it's Black's Fourth. I've got a definition here somewhere
You were talking
that
about
says that there's two
appropriate-
kinds of licenses.
Oh, license.
Okay? There's an express license and an implied
Right.
license. And the express license is something, the piece of paper you put in your wallet. But there's an implied license that is you know, implied because you pay the fee and then they let you proceed. Okay, that's a license
That's what
fee.
the lawyers do.
Well, and the lawyers do it too. You're right. You're right. So the point is that, and so that's why I say, and I think that's going to be that's going to hurt them big time. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be suing this federal judge when I file this lawsuit against Colleyville. I'm going to sue this federal judge, and I'm going to say that he dismissed it because I didn't pay his license fee, and he's converting my rights into privileges, and you know, that kind of thing. Okay.
You going to pay the fee for that one when you sue him?
No, absolutely not. I don't pay filing fees.
Well, what if you were to hand them silver? Would they even accept that?
They will convert it to Federal Reserve notes and say, "Oh yeah, we got our $150," and they'll give you lousy conversion rates. So it's up to you. I wouldn't.
Well, if it has a dollar
They're
sign
a bunch
on
of thieves and pirates, is what they are.
If it has a dollar sign on it, what they're asking for, pesos also have a dollar sign and about a lot less money. About
Yeah. Yeah.
So I learned that firsthand.
And you know how well
I know how well that works.
I
won't
don't
go into that.
I'm not interested in just, you know, my only argument is I'm a man, I'm not required to pay it, I am not paying it, but, you know, and then I sue them. And I make it so that, you know, I file judicial complaints, and the next thing you know, I mean, everybody and their brother knows about it, and it's like you're their worst nightmare. You
But
know?
they'll still let you file, like, without paying the fee doing that? Like, they don't try to fight you when you go to try to hand them the
Oh,
lawsuit?
they still, yeah, we'll see what happens this time when I go file a lawsuit. That's all I can tell you. I don't know what's going to happen. But I think that they're probably going to let me do it. I'll bet you.
I bet. But they'll probably put up a fight though
Mexican
first and
dollars.
argue
Well,
with you for
they
several
might-
minutes.
no, I doubt it.
Cheese and-
It's a clerk, okay? First of all,
That's
it's
why I
a
was-
clerk
yeah.
that what
jail,
happens
though.
is, at least
Tell you
in
later.
Texas, okay?
Whatever state
You file it with the clerk.
Illegally.
The clerk doesn't decide
And
whether you're
unlawful.
going to pay the license. I just tell them that, you know, I'll give them an affidavit. In the federal courts, I had this judge, and this is why if I file another lawsuit in federal court, but I want to sue the judge first and the chief judge. Okay, I want to sue them first, and then after that, I'll file another lawsuit in the federal court and see what happens. You see what I'm saying? Because,
Should file it in a Article 3 court in the District of Columbia.
well, you know, I've tried that and that didn't work either.
No?
But no, but what I'll do is I'm gonna look at Carl Lentz's stuff and because what I want is a common law court. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so and according to the court's website, they're common law.
Well, during the time of the Articles of Confederation, the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania was the highest court in the land.
Well, and
It's
you know,
still
I've heard that, but you know, I haven't seen any results from that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you know,
Can you declare the court to be common law court?
again, it comes down to the issues you bring up. Really, is what it comes down to. That's why Carl Lentz does the one-page lawsuit. I'm positive, because he keeps it really short and sweet. You know what I mean? You start bringing in all sorts of stuff, it gets complicated. And these judges want to convert it over to admiralty because then they get a royalty. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
Most judges retire millionaires because of the royalties they collect from admiralty
They get
cases.
a bounty.
Right.
Yeah, they're making money
Salvage.
in each case.
Well, they are. They are.
Salvage.
They don't make any money on
Salvage,
common law
booty,
cases, I don't think,
Booty.
except for salary.
We need to
Right.
seize
Booties
their
on land. bounties.
retirement account.
Anyways, so
I like that.
you know, we'll see. I don't know what's going to happen, but I can tell you, I've been to the Texas courts enough that there's a friend of mine that actually has been in them recently, and he didn't have to pay any filing fee for appeals. Nothing. He didn't have to pay anything. He appealed it to the Texas Supreme Court. It went all the way, and there was no filing fees all the way up there. And I think that was probably because of the ruckus that I stirred up when they were charging me $1,800.
Is there anything like in Texas law that they have to, like the arraignment, back to the arraignment, do they have to like have an arraignment within 24 hours or something like that?
Well,
Anything
that's-
with charging papers and all.
That's again, every state is going to have different stuff. That's under their codes. You know, you got to read their millions of codes.
Right.
I mean, that's the whole idea. That's called civil law. Okay, that's martial law creates civil law. Civil law is what you got in France. Everything's defined. You see what I'm saying? So you really have French civil law. They say that you can get common law somehow, but You know, they just go ahead and assault you with their codes, and so I don't know how you get common law, other than, you know, maybe with environmental court or with the common law court if they don't go after you for simulating a legal process or something like that. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's also like the title of the documents, like your one there, it says declaration, which is common law.
Right.
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 Compared
So
to
you
a
gotta
petition,
be really careful about
right.
what you do, for sure. Yeah. But that's why a grand jury is so powerful, because there's actually Supreme Court cases that say that the grand jury is unregulated. They cannot regulate a grand jury. And so Scalia actually wrote the decision, and he talks about it, where the grand jury, it's talked about, it's implied in the Fifth Amendment, but it's not mentioned anywhere in the body of the Constitution. And so the government has nothing to say about what goes on in a grand jury. That's why you hear about these runaway grand juries. And, you know, so my daughter was on a grand jury in Arizona. This was a statutory one for the state, right? And she told me it's amazing how many times people will, you know, the cop will come up to them and say, "Is that marijuana you're smoking?" And they'll say, "Oh, yeah." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She said it's amazing how many times that happens.
Yeah.
You know, make them prove it.
I argued that in a Canadian court on the word marijuana. I was on a case for some guy, and it was anyway. He was in New Brunswick, and I was in Montreal, in immigration court, and they were trying to extradite him to New Jersey for marijuana charges. So I objected.
Extradite you to
No,
New Jersey?
extradite him.
Oh.
I was going in as his next friend.
Okay.
All right. And in Canada, Canadian court, I mean, they're real up on the common law there. I mean, like
Right, they do.
And if you know your stuff,
Yeah.
they back off.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, they do, actually, yes.
So, what was it? So I objected to the word marijuana, and I said that in the United States, the laws are supposed to be written in English so you can understand it. All right, if you speak English. I go, in Canada, it's supposed to be written in English or French. I go, marijuana is neither English or French. It's a Mexican slang word. There's no basis of law for slang words.
Right on. Right on. So did you win?
Well, the judge tried to argue with me. She goes, well, that might be so in the United States. But in Canada, we put the word cannabis, and in parentheses, we put marijuana. I go, well, most people don't understand Latin either. And she just shut up and went on to the next subject.
Right on.
That word marijuana was never brought up again.
Right.
Good.
You wanted something from blacks?
No, well, I just quoting. Oh.
License.
Okay. That was Black's fourth. I'm just trying to license. Let's look it up.
What you drinking?
I've got Black's fourth on digital, but let's see what it says in here. Thank you. License. Right. License.
He does that all the time.
There's a whole bunch of stuff here.
Filling up his tea, pouring it in and splash.
Okay.
Why don't you get a t-shirt like that?
There's a whole bunch of them. What's that?
Read your screen over there.
Never forget the men who started this country were marijuana growing, whiskey drinking, tax evading rebels who left their beds at night to shoot at the cops. That's true. I mean, really, if you think about it, they were.
I've seen that in most of your videos. You put
Yeah,
that.
he's got it on your videos.
They were. I mean, really.
Well, yeah, they were cop killers.
Right.
Now we just strip them of all their assets and where they live, their property, and their job. The civil action.
Well, I stopped using the word marijuana now that I know the whole scandal behind it. They changed it from
Sure.
cannabis to marijuana to illegal.
Right. And actually, both parts of the word are two versions
And-
of the same word in Chinese.
and they did
So
that.
I don't know how it got to Mexico like that.
It was to try to scare people about Mexico and Mexicans and
Right.
cartels, and so it's like they created that word to
Sure,
discriminate against it.
Pancho Villa is when they
'Cause-
started that.
Because the laws are against marijuana, not cannabis. There's nothing about
Right.
it. So it's like, cannabis.
I don't understand.
Right.
Yeah.
Implied license is one which is presumed to have been given from the acts of the party authorized to give it. Right? So when you pay the filing fee, that's an implied license because you're allowed to proceed.
Yeah, key word is that in that is
It's
presumed.
like a tax.
Right. Presumed. Exactly.
Yeah, that's one way that they declare jurisdiction over you when you go to their court. Is generally everybody is paying a sewer tax. Somebody has connected to the utilities of the city, and of course the judges are employees of the city, most municipal judges, or the state. The state owns the sewer plants. So if you are utilizing their sewage connections, you are paying taxes. And that's a secret way that they claim they have jurisdiction over you, because they are the principal and you are the subject.
Yep, there's amazing, it's
They are the
presumed
principal.
again. It's all presumption. Okay? All tyranny needs to gain a foothold is for good people of good conscience to remain silent. So what we're going to learn today is who you are, how to assert your rights, a procedure to build a case against our public servants that will stand up in court, and they'll know what you're doing. But it's not a problem. You know, I can't tell you I've gotten, well, let's see, some responses. I got some in here. Somewhere. Anyways, they'll know what you're doing, and that's okay, because as long as, you know, they honor their oath, everybody's happy.
While you're looking for that, I'll make a short announcement then, since we have some dead airspace. This office will be closed out. We have 3 weeks left in this particular facility. So we were given our notice the 1st of November to get out. So they'll be announced.
Addicted?
She's doing some other things and with the space, and so she gave us notice. And we were sensing it was about time anyway to close shop. So you'll have notice about our new location. It'll be better. It'll be bigger. We're all squeezed as close. Yes, they're going down. Taking the things of value, the blinds, the desk, the shelves, the speakers.
You got replacement tiles?
Uh-huh.
You get some if you need some.
Do you have some? Bring them on by.
You got a home for this big guy here?
Not yet.
And there's a lodial, and that no,
Ad valorem tax.
huh?
Ad valorem tax. No ad valorem tax.
No, it's just
encumbrances.
No what?
Encumbrances.
No encumbrances, but I'm saying that they, no, what do you call the medieval stuff, the serf system.
Feudal.
Feudal.
No feudal
Titles.
titles.
Right.
Right.
It's
Well,
in the
they're all
Constitution.
feudal.
They
They're
can't
all
have no
feudal.
feudal titles here. Well, everybody does it fee simple, but it's supposed to be a lodial.
Yeah, but the fee simple is not really a lodial. I mean, it
No, it's
can
not-
be.
It's not a lodial, but
It can be.
It's,
Same thing in Texas. It says there's no ad valorem taxes in Texas. But an ad valorem tax is a tax based on the value of the property, right? And so property taxes are exactly that. But in Texas, there's a lady that I know that went through a foreclosure like 10 years ago, and she's still in the house, right? And it's a really expensive house. It's in an area, like you can buy a brand new house in Texas for under $100,000. But she was in an area where the average house is like $300,000, $400,000. And so she was, her house, I don't know what it was worth, but it's probably $350,000 house, and she was paying probably $8,000-$10,000 a year in property taxes. And so she went to the county tax assessor and started reading in the Riot Act, said, who rented this property for taxation? I'm going to sue their butt off. And the tax assessor said immediately, they said, don't worry, we'll take it off the tax rolls.
What type of taxes, property tax did you say it was?
Ad valorem tax.
Ad valorem.
Yeah. A-D-V-E-L-O-R-U-M. That's Latin, that's two words. Ad and valorem. Anyways, these are some deeds that I did with land, and we can talk about these after, but I just wanted to get them out. I couldn't find the document that I had. I've gotten mixed responses. I got, basically it was a insurance claim form from a county sheriff in New York, basically. That's what it was. Well, that's actually, in my opinion, a good response.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I didn't file a claim.
Risk management?
Yeah, exactly.
You did not file the claim?
No, he hadn't injured me. It's just, all of my stuff is preemptive. You know, my notice and command. It's designed to be preemptive. Anyways, I dealt with law and regulation all my life. I worked for over 35 years in aviation, starting in 1976. In the late 80s, somebody told me about the two classes of citizens. In the early 90s, I told them they were crazy. They produced some court cases to talk about it, and I thought, wow, this is the most fantastic thing there is, and I got to start looking into it. And the more I looked into it, the more I found out it's 100% true. In the mid-90s, I was in Toronto working on a Bombardier on a contract, and I met Patrick Ellis. And Patrick Ellis filed lawsuits. He showed me how to do court procedure.
Is he from in Canada?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Toronto.
I've known Patrick.
You know
I
Patrick?
met him years ago.
Is that right?
Yeah.
He still lives in
In
Toronto.
Ontario, because we were doing a land grab up against Ontario in Six Nations up there.
Right. Yeah, he's an adopted Indian.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So you know Patrick.
Yeah, I met him once up there in,
Yeah,
in
yeah.
Six Nations.
He's a Shinabay.
Yeah.
Anyways, okay. He knows how to do court work. He showed me how to do it.
Oh, yeah.
I filed, you know, in Ontario, I filed a lawsuit, and it went to the Ontario Court of Appeals, right? So I was making my appeal brief, which was like that thick, in a stationery store making copies. And this lawyer comes up, and he says, oh, you're in the Court of Appeals. I says, yeah. I says, my lawsuit is based on the fact that the people are sovereign. And the lawyer says, oh yeah, everybody knows that.
Yeah, that was just kind of smug.
Well, I mean, in that business, everybody knows. You see what I'm saying? I sued, what's the name of the power company? It was a power company, and I was in this high-rise in downtown Toronto serving my lawsuit on the lawyer, right? And so I was down there serving it on him, and the lawyer, what they did, I was at this front desk, I was like on the 20th floor of this high-rise in downtown Toronto. And what's the name of the power company? It was a power company. Anyways, this guy, I'm at the counter waiting for the lawyer to come out and effect service, right? They do that in Canada. It's no big deal. You can, in the U.S. you have to have someone else serve the stuff, right? In Canada you can serve it yourself. It's no big deal. Anyways, so I'm waiting for the lawyer to come out, and this other guy comes out, the lawyer's boss or one of his buddies or something. This other guy comes out, and he doesn't realize I'm the guy that is doing the lawsuit, right? He thinks I'm a process server. And he comes up to me and he says, oh, he says, this is a very interesting, you know, this guy has got a very interesting case. And that's the lawyer said that, about my case, and it was in the Court of Appeals. Yeah, so anyways, I filed several lawsuits in Ontario, and I've been to the Ontario Court of Appeals twice. I filed numerous lawsuits in the U.S. I've taken them to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 9th Circuit, the 5th Circuit, the 2nd Circuit, and the D.C. Circuit. And I've actually had 5 cases that went to the Supreme Court. In 2004, it was recommended that I get some of Rice McLeod's material. Rice McLeod was Attorney General for the Republic of Texas. Rice McLeod had a very down-to-earth way of explaining the law. Rice McLeod really helped me to see what was going on. One of the things Rice McLeod said, is, and it's just like it's Rice McLeod. Just it's like a home run. He'd say it.
We're back and running again.
Fornication under consent of the king.
UCK, yeah, I knew that.
Okay, so oh shoot,
Recap one back.
In 2004, it was recommended to me to get some of Rice McLeod's material. Rice McLeod was the Attorney General for the Republic of Texas. Rice McLeod had a very down-to-earth way of explaining the law. One of the things that he said that I really liked was, he says, the biggest problem in this world is third parties. He said, all lawyers are third parties, right? And a lawyer goes into court and he says, this guy did this and this guy did that, and he doesn't have any first-hand knowledge of anything.
No.
And and he said, then he goes on and he says, so why on earth would you want some third-party preacher involved in your relationship with God?
Right. Yeah.
Your stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Oh, here it is. Oh, that's not it. Oh, that's not it.
There, buddy.
We're just, it fell down or something?
It was on top of this.
Oh, okay. Yeah, these are documents that I brought forward the land patent on. And I've got several pieces. Anyways, so Rice McLeod just had a really down-to-earth way of talking about things. In 2006, I moved to Texas and got involved in the Republic of Texas. I was elected to Congress for the Republic of Texas. The Congress for the Republic of Texas elected me to be Speaker, and I was Speaker for the House of Representatives for the Republic of Texas for about a year and a half before I had to leave for a contract in New York. And I worked in New York for about a year and a half for Atlas Airlines. Over the years, I've learned that we're under martial law. All courts are corporate commercial courts in business to make a profit. All courts are banks and leverage the fees. All judges and prosecutors are getting royalties from every case they hear. There's no real justice. There's no justice in those courts. It's the appearance of justice, which is a fraud by definition. They'll slap whoever violated your rights, but it'll be behind the scenes, and the best way to deal with our public servants is administratively. That's true, out of the court. Over the years, I learned that there are few de jure governments operating on the planet. You know, there's actually a Chisholm versus Georgia case that said in 1793 that the only nation, I called it a nation, on the planet might be the United States of America in 1793. And they were going to decide in that case. You see what I'm saying? But they said all the rest of them are societies. None of them, there's no nations on the planet. They're all societies.
Is that still true today?
Well, it's probably worse today. I mean,
If they never decided on it, it wasn't official.
Well, that was before the decision of the case came out, or the final decision. See what I'm saying?
So they did make a final decision.
Well, yeah, and I would say that at the time, the United States of America was a de jure nation. Maybe it was more like, if you read the, and that's where we were talking about, remember the Articles of Confederation again, right?
Right. Article
And the definitive, see, and this is one thing we were talking about the Northeast Private Information Share, is that the Northwest Ordinance, what it does is it says that, well, before the Northwest, it was the definitive Treaty of Peace of 1793, okay? 1783. It says that King George recognizes the United States of America, and then he says "viz," okay, in other words, and he lists them. North Dakota, or should I say Massachusetts, New York, Rhode Island, you know, he listed them all, right? And he didn't call it, he didn't say anything about the Articles of Confederation like the United States of America, because under Article 1 of the Articles of Confederation, which were done in 1781, 2 years before the definitive Treaty of Peace, so he had to know. And so he called them, he said the United States of America, and he listed them, all the states. You see what I'm saying? Are free, sovereign, independent states. And then what he did is he said, just for clarity's sake, we're going to define what the border between the United States and Canada is going to be, and they basically went down the St. Lawrence Seaway, St. Lawrence River and through the middle of the Great Lakes out to Lake of the Woods and then across to the Mississippi River, right? And so, but what that did, what some of us are starting to think did, is it was like the Trojan horse, because it gave the federal government some territory that they had exclusive jurisdiction over now, right? That's why they had to pass the Northwest Ordinance. Now the Northwest Ordinance is really interesting because it says in there that this territory north of the Ohio River and all this territory that's there is going to be like anywhere between 3 and 5 states, right? But it says that the inhabitants are always, forever, going to be entitled to a jury of their peers, to common law, all that stuff. It's in the Northwest Ordinance. And you could actually use that to define any federal territory anywhere in the country, really, once you understand how all that stuff works. And so the Northwest Ordinance is really powerful, but it still only applies, it's federal territory. And that's where the federal territory got started, right? And then they started buying Louisiana Purchase and all this other stuff. They maybe conquered some in some wars, like Puerto Rico and all the rest of this. You see what I'm saying? And so there's some of us that think that that might have been a Trojan horse, where it created this federal territory, and now the federal government had this actual territory where before they didn't. You see what I'm saying? Anyways.
So Glenn, for direction here, for our hopes for a good presentation, you know, we were talking about we don't need any more history, we don't need any more stories about how bad it is. What we need is processes that have worked. So we were talking about, for direct, weren't we talking about a notice and demand tonight?
Yeah, okay, I'll get going.
Okay, yeah, just two hours of warm up.
Yeah, I'm not joking. I'm sorry. Okay, so there's
It's
so
winter.
almost all laws are color of law. Okay, color of law is something that looks like law.
It's a de facto.
The Declaration of Independence even talks about it. Okay, pretend legislation. Okay, that's color of law. Anyways, almost all countries are under martial law. I think that Ukraine and Russia might not be. The Russians are really, really smart, I'm telling you. They are very astute, because if you remember what happened when the Soviet Union broke up, right? Boris Yeltsin was in control, and they had this little civil war thing where the White House was being besieged, right? I think they might have orchestrated that so they could liquidate that unconstitutional corporation and bring the de jure government back out again, okay? Because Putin, I mean,
He's a badass.
he is.
He's a
He is.
badass.
I think, and if you go to Russia, you get a red stamp in your passport. You go to Ukraine. I've been to Ukraine. You get a red stamp in your passport.
That's sovereign.
Sorry?
Sovereign red.
Exactly. Exactly. They are brilliant. They really know what's going on, and that's why I say Putin is really brilliant. Anyways, so what they've done, and I think those might be the only really sovereign nations on the planet. Certainly there's nothing like that over here, you know? And I found Ukraine more free than here, quite frankly. But anyways, so they set everybody up for slavery. Do you want to be a slave? Is there a price for your freedom that you're not prepared to pay? You know? I have spent literally tens of thousands of dollars serving these things, these documents. Sent them by registered mail, hundreds of them. I sent one to every member of the U.S. Congress, more than one. Matter of fact, I sent a nastygram to every member of the U.S. Congress. After I sent the other one, my nastygram starts off, and I wouldn't recommend everybody doing this. This is something that's, you have to kind of be careful how you do it, you know. But my nastygram starts off, says something like, "Normally I accept your oath of office, but you and I both know you have no intention of honoring your oath of office, so fuck your oath, you fucking bitch." And it kind of goes from there. You know what I mean?
That was for Nancy.
That was the kind formalities.
Anyway, so let's keep going here. We got to get going. The burden's on you to assert your rights. If you do not assert your rights, you lose them. Anything you say can or will be used against you in a court of law. They tell you that all the time, right?
If they had a quote.
The burden is on the defendant to show the non-existence of jurisdictional facts. Okay? So you gotta, there's actually 11 elements of jurisdiction, and that's a video I'm planning on doing here pretty quick. I need to do that because that is like really important. And
7 or 11?
11.
Okay.
Rule 12.
11? I thought it was 11. Maybe it is 7. I thought it was 11. Anyways, because we're under martial law, the courts presume everything. If you go on the attack, you can defeat their presumptions. If this procedure is followed properly, they will deal with it. Okay? Our public servants, actually most of them are good and honorable people. Okay? There's only really some of them are crooks. And you have to build a case against all of them. And most of them are honorable. You know, it's some of them that are crooks. Because you're under martial law, if you're already under attack, it becomes very difficult to deal with because it gets more difficult the further are you along in their process. It's much easier if you attack them before they ever see you. Okay? Because now you got the advantage. It's warfare. Okay? The best defense is a good offense. Right? That's the way you got to treat it. They've been good teachers for me because I do to them what they do to me. I grind them through my system. I presume they're guilty and make them prove they're not. I started out by filing commercial liens in 2005. I filed a $15 million commercial lien against IRS and all the deputy commissioners, and IRS Mark Everson resigned. George Bush had him on the White House lawn saying that it's the toughest job in the country. Serious. I don't know if what I was doing caused it, but I can tell you they had an acting commissioner for a while, and he resigned before his time was up. And I not only filed commercial liens, I filed criminal complaints against them. I filed a lawsuit and took them to the Supreme Court twice. They don't want to talk to me now. I kind of like that.
When you went to the Supreme Court, what was the results?
Well, every time I've been to the Supreme Court, it says right in their rules, okay? It says right in their rules that they can turn away any case they want, right? And they have a filing fee. And every time, I basically use the same arguments every time in my affidavit to proceed without the extortion, as well as in the petition itself. Okay, it's basically the same arguments. But I tell them that I'm one of the people, and first of all, income is corporate profits, okay? And you just go down the list, okay? And I don't have income. I'm one of the people. I get compensation for labor, you know, and et cetera, right? And every time they accepted the case, and every time there was no filing fee. Now, I know people that got cases turned away. You remember Michael New? Remember Michael New? He was that guy in the Army that refused to take the UN patch back in the 90s, right? I met his dad. Huh?
I got the book, yes.
I met his dad, and his dad told me how their appeals had been exhausted and the Supreme Court didn't take the case. And he told me they don't even docket it. Doesn't even get docketed. Okay? I have docketing letters for every one of my cases. I could show them to you right now. They're in my computer, digitals. And so I have docketing letters for every one of them. So what happened is every case I tell them, you have no right to turn this case away and you have no right to tax me because I'm one of the people. Every time they accept the case, there's no fee. Every time I serve the docketing letter on the Department of So-Called Justice, right, which is what I call them, Department of So-Called Justice. And the Department of So-Called Justice waives their right to respond. And every time, after they waive their right to respond, I file a criminal complaint against the U.S. Solicitor General for perjury of oath and all that. Within a couple of weeks, he resigns. And then what happens is every time he waives his right to respond, it goes to the Supreme Court dismisses the case. And I get a letter from the clerk. I don't even get anything from a judge. I get a letter from the clerk. But that's, you know, that's it.
So is it a win?
Well, it's kind of a hollow victory because if you think about it, it is a victory, but it's nothing like resounding. You know what I mean?
Right.
In other words, when they waive their right to respond, you got to understand how the courts work. Okay? When you go in and you make some allegations in the courts, you say this guy did this and this guy did that and this guy did this, and he doesn't dispute it. It's admitted as the truth. It's right in their rules, right? So when the Department of So-Called Justice waives their right to respond, they're saying, okay, so what? We know about that. Right? And what that does is, in the Constitution, it says they have to have a controversy. Right? And so it takes away the controversy. There's nothing to rule on. They've admitted everything. You see what I'm saying?
So do you put a monetary value of your damages?
You know, I haven't pursued that at all. I'm not even sure, but that's kind of commercial, and I try and stay away from commerce. You know what I mean? That's getting into, again.
Well, if you've been damaged, then.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. Well, IRS, I took them to the Supreme Court twice. You know.
If you've been injured, you're entitled to damages.
Well, if they defame your name or incarcerate you, you've been injured.
You're party agreed.
Right.
Correct.
That's your article. Your Article 1 of the Bill of Rights. Right. Is to redress your grievance.
I agree, and I use that every time. I have a right to, and so therefore you can't regulate it by taxing me. And I mean, I use that. I mean, it's a 10-page affidavit. And the last time I did it in federal court, and I don't even do the affidavit in federal court anymore, because the last time I did it in federal court, the judge came back and he said it's all gibberish.
Of course.
And so next time, if I file something in federal court and they want an affidavit, I'm going to get an affidavit and I'm going to have every line full of gibberish. And I'm going to say, I wouldn't want McBride to be a liar, so I'm going to fill this thing with gibberish.
Right.
That's exactly what I'm going to do. But that's going to be after I sue his ass. Anyways. He's right. There's no justice in those courts. The best, the absolute best you'll ever see is the appearance of justice. Absolute best. If they ruled everything in your favor, it'd only be the appearance of justice.
A court of law. May I read the definition? It's a noun. Any tribunal within a judicial system. Under English common law, and in some states, it was a court which heard only lawsuits in which damages were sought, as distinguished from a court of equity, which could grant special remedies. That distinction has dissolved, and every court, with the exception of federal bankruptcy courts, is a court of law.
You know,
I think they just
cash talks and bullshit walks.
That's right.
Anyways. Okay, so keep going. I filed a $500 million commercial lien against J.P. Morgan Chase Bank and all of their executive officers. I filed a $500 million commercial lien against Wilshire Credit Corporation. I got them. I can show them to you.
And what was the result of that?
I filed a $3 billion commercial lien against the law firm in Phoenix and all of their executive officers. I filed a $15 million commercial lien against Capital One Bank and all of their executive officers. I sent numerous invoices. The United States owes me about $2 billion. I think maybe that's why they're driving up the debt, because they want to make that $2 billion worthless. The reason I'm telling you all this is I believe commercial liens work and are valid, but you're operating in their system, okay? And they are thieves. Really, that's what they are. They're nothing but thieves and pirates. Why on earth would you expect a thief or a pirate to be anything but a thief or a pirate? Right? You're sitting there going to them and expecting them to be honorable. They're thieves and pirates. They're not going to be honorable. Yes, you're going to run into some that are more honorable than other ones, but they're all thieves and pirates.
black robe devils.
Yep.
There's no honor among thieves when you go into their commercial system. Once you go into their commercial system, once you bring up, oh, I'm a secured party creditor, you just forever, in that case, said, I'm one of your slaves. Right? I fall under the United Nations and the Uniform Commercial Code, and I don't have any rights as far as this case is concerned. You can never take that back.
That's the Roman cult.
That's right. It's exactly what it is. I started filing criminal complaints and I saw much better results. I filed hundreds of notice and demands, actually thousands, and dozens, maybe hundreds of criminal complaints. Almost all of the criminal complaints may be viewed at the Pinal County Recorder's website. Now what I do is I put them online on Google Docs and I make them public So anybody can look at them, just search for them. But if you want to see it, just send me an email. I'll send you a link, and you can go and you can go there, and they're PDF files. Has the attachments. It shows you how I build them and put them together. Because what you do is you make an affidavit and you incorporate evidence into your affidavit to support your statements. You see what I'm saying? So you got to know. I mean, it's not that rocket science, but you build a case. So. Keep going. After filing criminal complaints, I've seen numerous people resigned or removed. 3 U.S. attorneys in Arizona, 3 U.S. attorneys for Texas, U.S. Attorney General Alberto Gonzales. I filed a criminal complaint against him, and I attached it to a petition for writ of certiorari to the U.S. Supreme Court. 2 weeks later, he announces that he's resigning and he's hiring attorneys to defend himself in the Department of Justice. So I have no proof that anything I did caused this. Okay, anytime. They're never going to admit it. Think about it. You're accusing them of multiple felonies. Do you think they're going to come up to you and say, "Oh yeah, your affidavit's why I removed"? That's like saying, "Oh yeah, I'm a felon." They're not going to admit it. But it's amazing how many times that kind of stuff happens. U.S. Solicitor General Paul Clements, Pennsylvania Attorney General, Ohio Public Safety Commissioner, IRS Commissioner Mark Everson, I talked about, 2 Alberta Attorney Generals, U.S. Congressmen, U.S. Senators. Now, I think with the U.S. Congressmen or U.S. Senators, I think it was probably more like they saw what I was saying and they found out that it was probably true, and maybe they just kind of got a bad taste in their mouth and decided not to run, and maybe they're probably the honorable ones. You know what I mean? Anyways, don't get me going. I've seen positive results in Ontario after filing a lawsuit. This was in Ontario. Within 2 weeks, there was an announcement on national TV that said that the issue I brought up, I said that they forced me to get a social insurance number in Canada. And they came out on TV and said that nobody has to get a social insurance number. And there's people I know in Canada that would, there was one guy that I heard about. I don't know him, I heard about it, but where his son was trying to get a job, and they were telling his son that he had to get a social insurance number so he could be taxed. And his dad called up Revenue Canada and said, and he basically went like this. He said, my son doesn't think he has to get a social insurance number. Can you tell him he has to get a social insurance number? And Revenue Canada went and said, yeah, well, we need to research it. We'll get back with you. And a couple days later, they call him up and they say he doesn't have to get a social insurance number. There's no law that says he has to get a social insurance number. And then he said, well, okay, can you tell his employer that? And they said, sure. So now we got one guy working without a slave number. See what I'm saying? So he kind of did reverse psychology on him, you know. And that happened in Canada. Of course, I doubt that it happened here. But so this happened twice. U.S. attorneys were removed. They'll never admit that anything I did had anything to do with them, you know, any of this stuff happening. I seen positive results. Alberto Gonzales resigned less than 2 weeks after I filed a petition of writ of certiorari with the criminal complaint against him attached with the U.S. Supreme Court, and he said he was hiring attorneys. I already talked about that. I filed a criminal complaint against a court clerk for addressing mail to me with a zip code, and the clerk disappeared. And next time, there's always another clerk I was dealing with, and the future mail didn't include a zip code. You know, really. And I'll show you examples of stuff that I get. Okay? Because I get stuff all the time with no zip code, with the address that I require. And I've gotten lawyers to do that too. This is a procedure I developed over the last 7 years. I send a registered letter to my public servant. When my public servant violates my rights, I file a criminal complaint against him and send it to his boss. After 30 days, I make up another criminal complaint naming my public servant and his boss as a co-conspirator and accomplice after the fact and send to the next guy up the chain of command. Now, I don't do so much of that boss stuff anymore because it gets time-consuming and expensive. Yeah, that's right. But I do file criminal complaints, and what I do is I'll send it to the district attorney in Texas, depending on who it is, or the U.S. attorney, and then what I'll do is I'll do another criminal complaint and I'll name the district attorney or the U.S. attorney as an accomplice if they're not doing anything about it. See what I'm saying? And I get Trump involved. Yes.
Would you like to give us an example of what you're considering a criminal complaint that you file for the record? Because you can go online and file criminal complaints with some of their little judicial, let's slap the judge on the hand or let's slap the attorney on the hand web pages. So what do you call in a criminal complaint?
Well, I don't use their forms, if that's what you're wondering. And it's an affidavit with evidence, and I go through point by point and tell a story. And, you know,
Do you
they
record
can
this?
easily be like hundreds of pages with the evidence attached. Okay, sometimes they're not. And I can send you links. I mean, I upload them all to Google Docs.
So your criminal complaints are hundreds of pages long?
Can be.
Can be.
Can be, yeah. Yeah. Because with the attachments, with the evidence.
Now, somebody that gets a criminal complaint is under some sort of statutory duty to read these hundreds of pages?
Well, you know, again, that's their job, the U.S. attorney. That's their job to prosecute criminals, right? And so what I do is, if I don't see anything happening, well, then I file another criminal complaint and I'll send it to Trump and let him look at it along with the Attorney General, who is Barr, right? And, you know, I don't know what's happening, you know, and again, it could come down to the fact that maybe I was, you know, I made a mistake and gave evidence against myself or something like this, and that's why they're not proceeding. But I still, again, again, if you don't complain, nothing's going to change, right? And you add your evidence. Anyways, you can see what we're talking about here, and then you know, it's up to you what you want to do about it. But I definitely, they can be hundreds of pages for sure, you know. And what I'll do is I'll attach them to a lawsuit, file a lawsuit, and name, you know, everybody and their brother.
Once you file the criminal complaint and it's sat and haven't done anything, then you file a lawsuit thereafter?
I might.
Is that what you meant just now when you said that I file it to attach it to a lawsuit, or you take the criminal complaint and make it part of the lawsuit?
Well, it's evidence, right? So you attach
It's an
it to a lawsuit.
affidavit of criminal complaint. You're
Right,
saying.
it's evidence, right? So you attach it to a lawsuit and you use it to support what you're saying in a lawsuit. Or you file a lawsuit, you can, you know, and it's really one of the things that I'm moving towards is really short lawsuits. Okay, like Carl Lentz. It won't be a page, but if I can get it down to like maybe 10 pages, okay, so you just put in the meat and you talk about the criminal complaint and you say that here's a link to it on Google Docs if you want to go look at it, and then if somebody wants to complain or wants to read it, I'll file it into the case.
I just don't want to give you any ideas, but I know somebody that wrapped them up in really nice foil paper and put little bows around them and just starts making a criminal complaint and tossing them around the community so they let everyone know what's going on, and made a real showing of it. So I know somebody did that, and he's sitting in his room right over there. That's just a way to do criminal complaint, but that's local.
And
Local, and it worked.
That's how they do it in Arkansas.
And there was no court, no action. He just made a public court out of making a criminal complaint.
Well, of course, and I know
And that
other
worked.
people. I know other people that do that. They make flyers,
Right.
bad-mouthing judges, and go door to door and hand them out. I know a guy that did that in Canada, and everything changed for him. And so, absolutely, they're political, right? They're political, and stuff like that starts getting out. But you know, mine are a little bit more complicated. I mean, you can make a flyer and really cut it short and sweet, but a flyer, I mean, you got to basically condense it into a page, and so
Front and back.
you know, huh?
Front and back.
Yeah, you could front and back, so that's 2 pages. But the bottom line, though, is that you know, I mean, with mine, I have evidence. I mean, I'm trying to get the U.S. attorney to get out their backside to go down and rattle her cage. You see what I'm saying? Anyways, so after, so this stuff here is where I start adding our boss's boss. I don't do so much of that stuff anymore. I keep going up the chain of command to the president. I definitely send the president. I might send the president a copy. I've sent a lot of documents to the president. Okay, lawsuits even, where I'm sending him a lawsuit like this lawsuit this judge in Texas dismissed. Right? I sent him a copy, And what I did was, this judge in Texas that dismissed my lawsuit, okay, I sent his boss, the chief judge, one of my nasty grams. Okay? And it basically says, normally I accept your oath of office, but you and I both know that you have no intention of honoring your oath of office, and so fuck your oath, you fucking bitch. Okay, because this is a lady. And then I said, if you or your pigs want a piece of me, you just name the date, time, and location, and I'll come armed. We'll settle it for once and for all. If I know you and your pigs will never take me up on that because you're cowards, and you'll sneak around and try and catch me when I'm unarmed, so I can't defend myself, and stuff like that. And I'll say stuff like, I've never in my life breached the peace, and your pigs breach the peace all the time. And, stuff like that. You see what I'm saying? I'm serious. I sent that to the chief judge. I could show it to you here. And what I did, though, is I sent it to her, and I copied in the U.S. attorney. Okay, so right on the front page, it's got her, to her, CC U.S. attorney, CC U.S. Attorney General, CC Donald Trump. So they all got a copy. And I talked about that judge that had dismissed like about 8 of my cases because I didn't pay his extortion. So I guarantee you he got somebody talking to him. But what happened is when Trump got it, he came out on national TV saying how he had appointed 80 judges and things are going to change. So he read that stuff, I guarantee you. Anyways.
Correction, from lady to woman. Said she was a lady.
Oh, that's true. She's a
Well,
woman.
he called her a bitch.
Well, and then he called her a lady afterwards. I'm saying.
Yeah, I
correction.
suppose. She wasn't a lady.
Well, that's the Lord's mistress.
Correct.
Really.
Correction withdrawn.
Oh, well, whatever. But anyway, so she was female. But, although, nowadays you never know. But at any rate, she
identifies herself as a woman.
So she was an extension cord.
Right?
at any rate,
Nowadays, you never know.
at any rate, I wouldn't send something like that to somebody like that without making sure that some other people see it, and because
that's a way to get.
They'll get you for threatening
Yeah, you get in big trouble.
public servant.
well, there was no threats in it, and at the very end, it said something like. Before God, angels, and these witnesses that read this document, I shake the dust of the earth from off my feet against you, and we're going to talk about this on Judgment Day. And at the very end it said that. But the point is that this whore was dismissing these cases, and he wasn't supposed to be. This bought and paid for whore.
Jezebel.
And she was his boss. Now, what happened, I can tell you, I filed another lawsuit. Well, what happened is, before he dismissed this case, right? Well, when he dismissed it, I had just filed another lawsuit in the same court. Okay, what I did is I filed a lawsuit in Dallas, right? And they sent it to Fort Worth, okay, which is the Fort Worth division of the Northern District of Texas, right? And that's how it got into McBride's hands, and he has dismissed so many cases. I sent it to Dallas because I didn't want it to get into his hands, and they wound up getting into his hands anyways, and he dismissed it. And so before he dismissed it, I filed another case in Dallas. Well, that one didn't go over there. Okay, so they're learning. That one didn't go over there, but that other case was like 1,000 pages, right, with attachments and everything. And so I did get a thing from but I called it, what I did is I called it a war crimes complaint. Okay? It's a war crimes complaint because they're engaged in war crimes. And I said that under the Geneva Convention, you cannot regulate my right to get a remedy under, I think it's Article 8. It says I cannot give up the rights that are guaranteed in the Geneva Convention. And under Article 27, or under Article 52, you cannot regulate my rights, which means I'm not following your rules. I'm not affecting service. I'm not doing anything involving this case. I'm not even going to respond. And I'm not paying your extortion. And I said, and under Article 27, you're required, you can let your hired thugs off the hook, but you cannot, your corporation's still responsible under Article 27. And I said, so I'm not filing, I'm not affecting service, I'm not doing anything, and I'm not even going to respond. And I said, but you can mail a check here. So we'll see. But I can tell you that the case hasn't been dismissed. And it hasn't gone to Fort Worth.
They're still reading. It's 1,000 pages.
It's 1,000 pages.
It'll take them a couple of decades.
Yeah. But so, again, you know, it's a war crimes complaint, right? And so, anyways, who knows?
Okay.
Let's keep going.
Notice and demand.
Right.
We're talking about notice and demand tonight.
Right. Well, I was talking about my
Eventually.
procedure. Okay, and the notice demand is the foundational part of the criminal complaint or the lawsuit, depending on which way you want to go with it. Okay, the notice and demand builds your case. Okay, takes away their presumptions. Let's see it here. One of the last pages talks about, and we're going to go through this stuff, but I'm not sure if we're going to, you know, get there. There's good faith. Okay, all state statutes have this good faith, and it's because of Article 44 of the Liber Code. Under Article 44 of the Liber Code, let me find it. L-I-E-B-E-R. No. Oh, no wonder. No wonder. There. Article 44 of the Liber Code. Right there. Says, all wanton violence committed against persons in the invaded country, all destruction of property not commanded by the authorizing officer, all robbery, all pillage or sacking, even after taking place by main force, all rape, wounding, maiming, or killing of such inhabitants are prohibited under the penalty of death, and such other severe punishment as may seem adequate for the gravity of the offense. A soldier, officer, or private in the act of committing such violence and disobeying a superior ordering him to abstain from it may be lawfully killed on the spot by such superior. So, that gives them good faith. That gives them the ability to go ahead and assault you once until someone tells them to stop and get away with it. That's exactly what they do. Okay? That gives them the ability to get away with it once. That's good faith. That's called good faith. And there's statutes that cover it. This is Texas Code of Criminal Procedure, Article 38.23. Quote, no evidence obtained by an officer or other person in violation of any provisions of the constitutional laws of the state of Texas or the constitutional laws of the United States of America shall be admitted in evidence against the accused on the trial of any criminal case. Gee, that sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Wow. Wow, that's so good. Paragraph B. It is an exception to the provisions of subsection A of this article that the evidence was obtained by a law enforcement officer acting in objective good faith reliance upon a warrant issued by a neutral magistrate based on probable cause. So, good faith. Same thing exists in federal statutes. That's Texas. Every state has this stuff. Under federal statutes, 18 U.S.C. 2707. Defense. A good faith reliance on a court warrant or order, a grand jury subpoena, a legislative authorization, or a statutory authorization, including a request of a governmental entity under Section 2703F of this title, A request of an investigative or law enforcement officer under Section 2518(7) of this title, or a good faith determination that Section 2511(3) of this title permitted the conduct complained of, is a complete defense to any civil or criminal action brought under this chapter or any other law. Good faith. If they can claim good faith, they can get away with it.
Lawyers do that all the time. Say, oh,
Exactly.
I did it in good faith.
Yeah. And that's why they're having so much trouble building a case against Clinton, I guarantee you.
Yeah.
Anyways, so there's a thing called Estoppel. Estoppel is a bar that prevents one from asserting a claim or right that contradicts what one has said or done before what has been legally established as true. That's Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition. Estoppel by silence. Estoppel that arises when a party is under a duty to speak but fails to do so. And the principles of estoppel apply against the state as well as individuals. Okay, so that's some court cases and law dictionary definitions. And so I tell them you're now put into estoppel. That's one of the things that this is designed to do. Okay, put them into estoppel. So they can't presume that you're some slave. Okay. Anyways, and that's because of Article 44 of the Labor Code.
I had a lawsuit in Northern District of New York court, and we got beat up on the reservation by the state troopers, New York state troopers, and they tried to claim immunity from prosecution, law enforcement immunity, and the court ruled that if a public official knowingly violates a constitutional right, he can be sued in his personal capacity.
Right.
Yeah. But
Right.
there was no ruling like that before that case.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I've heard of that one.
So, but even the Labor Code says that you might be able to get their cops off the hook, but the corporation's still responsible. In other words, send me the check to this address. See what I'm saying?
Corporation is a person, and they're subject to pay damages.
Sure.
And if they don't have enough money, the Secretary is required, the Secretary of the United States Treasury is required to pay the balance of the damages.
So is this a respondeat superior? It just keeps working up the chain of command?
Well, you can use it that way. I mean, I don't because, again, that gets expensive, but you can use it that way, certainly. Okay? Again, you build a case against them, right? And you take away their plausible deniability, their good faith, and you put them into estoppel, and you proceed against them. Okay? You got to build a case. So that's the whole purpose of this. Anyways, so recording documents, technically they're supposed to record anything, but any times they give you a hard time depending on who's running it and whether they're going to have a problem perjuring their oath of office. Some counties will literally record anything. It used to be. It's not the case anymore. Pinal County told me that if they would record a hamburger if I paid the money. Okay, they're not the same way anymore. Okay, but Lamar County in Georgia is supposed to be the same way. Okay, they'll record it whatever you want.
As long as it doesn't have a court seal on it.
Oh, was that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So when I send them a notice and demand, usually I get no response at all. That means they've acquiesced. If there's something you're saying that's not true, then they have a duty to point it out. Silence can only be equated with fraud when there's a legal or moral duty to speak, or when an inquiry left unanswered would be intentionally misleaded. We can't not condone this shocking conduct. If that is the case, we hope our message is clear. This sort of deception will not be tolerated, and if this is routine, it should be corrected. That's U.S. versus Tweel. Fraud is an intentional perversion of the truth for the purpose of inducing another into reliance, in reliance upon it, to part with some valuable thing belonging to him or to surrender a legal right. When one conveys a false impression by disclosure of some facts or concealment of others, such concealment is in effect a false representation, which what is disclosed is the whole truth. Suppression of a material fact which a party is bound in good faith to disclose is equivalent to a false representation. Anyways, there's a bunch of cases about fraud. Check out my YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow me on Steemit. Don't forget to like this video on YouTube. Don't forget to click the bell next to the subscribe button so you're notified when there's a new upload on Steemit. Don't forget to vote and make your comments. This is the front page of my channel. The bell, or the subscribe button's been clicked. The bell hasn't been clicked. The arrow's pointing at the bell. And so if the bell's clicked, it'll look like it's vibrating. Anyway, so positive responses. One of the first documents I sent out was to the Pinal County Recorder in Arizona. She sent a very short letter back that said, "Thank you for your document. I got it on file." And then she signed it most respectfully. So that's a good answer. You know what I mean?
She wasn't called the fucking bitch, though.
No, definitely not.
Or a whore.
A judge in Texas sent me a certified copy of his oath of office and surety bond.
Wow.
Yeah, no joke. Yeah, that was a good answer too. Edmonton City Police sent me a letter acknowledging receipt of the document, and this is actually the letter.
Oh, Canada.
And oh, whoops. And all it says is, this will confirm your letter is received in the professional standards branch. I've reviewed the contents of your letter. No, there's no articulated complaints of misconduct or complaints of service with respect to any members of the Edmonton Police Service in relation to the policies and procedures of the Edmonton Police Service. As such, this matter has been classified as information only, is now concluded. So, gee, that's a good response. I mean, they're saying, yeah, we got it, and we're taking note.
Right.
They're not disputing any of it. You see what I'm saying?
They're very polite in Canada.
Yeah, well, sometimes. The U.S. Solicitor General sent me a letter acknowledging my notice and demand, and this is the one, and notice they did the mail exactly like I told them.
Really?
Yeah, that was exactly like I told them to do it.
Wow.
Could you read the address?
Says Glenn Winningham, House of Fern, non-domestic mail, care of 6340 Lake Worth Boulevard, number 437, Fort Worth, Texas, zip code exempt. Domestic mail manual 602.1.3.C2 and 18 U.S.C. section 1342.
And they put no zip code on it.
It gets to be no problem. It gets to be no problem. I do
Drop it in your box.
Of course.
Well, you got the 18 U.S.C. on there too, the mail fraud
That's mail
statute
fraud.
on there.
That's
Yeah.
right. But now, if you look on here, this is my current way that I use for mailing stuff. And it gets to be no problem too. But yeah.
Did you ever try sending it 2 cents?
Oh yeah, I do that all the
Yeah,
time.
2 cents.
We
Matter
talked
of
about
fact-
that in the beginning of
Yeah.
before you got here.
Yeah. I brought a bunch of 3
2
cent
cents or
stamps.
3 cents?
2 cents.
No,
It's-
2 cents on the 2
Yeah.
cents on the envelope when you send it out to them.
That's for a postcard. Okay? For a regular envelope, it's 3 cents per half ounce.
Right.
And so,
You have to have
right. So you could send a large envelope as long as you weigh it, and you put 3 cents per half ounce.
And
So-
use no zip code.
Yeah.
Right.
So I send. Well, the reason is.
You know, return address.
The reason is, and I can show you what I use, but that's kind of like off the topic, and we need to keep moving on this. So I can send you the file that I use because it basically, Ted in West Virginia is the one that is the real expert on this stuff, and he sends registered mail, free mail. That's postage paid, so he doesn't pay anything. Drops it in there with the registration bar and the return receipt. Now, when you send registered mail or certified, and you put the green card on it, and you want the green card, you have to see, when you pay for that stuff, you pay for the green card. So if you're not going to pay for it, if it's going to be free, then that's when you put the 2 cent stamp on that green card, so that when they tear it off of there, then the postage, you paid for the postage to get it back to you. See what I'm saying? That's a 2 cent stamp.
Is there a video on your YouTube channel that detailing that specific process?
Yeah.
I didn't see that one.
Yeah, well, that's, again, you go to my website and go through all the list of videos on the pre-videos, right? And all of that stuff is listed in
The
there.
per Q, you called it?
Yeah,
It's the red.
It's the mail one.
let's see here.
I
seen
got
it?
all my green cards back without
I think
the
that
2 cents.
video is like
Saw it
3 years
earlier
old.
tonight.
It is an old one.
We don't put
Here's the videos.
I got all mine back. and
I
got
would
the
look
2 cents.
under,
You paid for it.
that's the kangaroo courts.
You got like 15 of those.
Yeah.
I've seen them all.
Common law, bar members, international law, banksters,
It makes me think of Carrie
taxes. Do-it-yourself series. Here's the do-it-yourself pre-mail right here.
Okay, it's on there. Okay.
Yeah. So I would look for it under the do-it-yourself series, and if you just you click on it, right, and it takes you to the YouTube channel. See, there it is, right there on the YouTube channel. Okay, that's all you have to do.
The website is sovereignliving FYI.
Yeah. No, it's sovereigntyinternational.fyi. All one word. It's sovereigntyinternational.fyi. Right there. That's sovereigntyinternational.fyi. So then you go to the free videos right here.
.fyi.
Click play. Watch the free videos. Okay. So this is it right here. sovereigntyinternational.fyi. And you click on this play, and it'll open up another page, which is all the videos, or almost all of them, links to the YouTube videos. So then you can go, you can find what you're looking for and study based on topics and stuff like that. See what I'm saying? Okay, so let's keep moving here. Oh, and there's a higher one, or a close-up of the Solicitor General's letter. Negative responses. The Pennsylvania Attorney General sent a letter making all sorts of legal determinations and presumptions and said that, arrest me and take me down and put me in jail. On March of 2010, I filed a criminal complaint, sent it to the Chief Judge of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court and the U.S. Attorney. The U.S. Attorney sent me a letter saying they were going to referring the matter to the FBI. And then on 22nd of February 2011, which was about 6 months later, well, it's actually more than that, maybe almost a year, I guess, I checked the Pennsylvania Attorney General's website, and it says William H. Ryan Jr. becomes acting Pennsylvania Attorney General, and there it is right there. The Ohio Director of Public Safety, Henry Guzman, sent me a letter making all sorts of legal determinations. In August of 2009, I filed a criminal complaint and sent it to the Ohio Attorney General, the Chief Judge of the Ohio Supreme Court, and the State Bar, the U.S. Attorney, etc. In February of 2011, I checked the Ohio Public Safety website, and it says that in January of 2011, Thomas P. Charles was appointed the Ohio Director of Public Safety, and he was formerly the Ohio Inspector General for the last 13 years. Well, the Inspector General is one that's supposed to know what's going on, for sure. And this is their website. I first started doing this when I was going through a foreclosure in Arizona. So we're going to go into the background. I decided to arrest the auctioneer when they were selling my house on the courthouse steps. When you witness a felony, you can make an arrest.
Yeah, so this is arrest.
That's the only time anyone, including the police, can lawfully make an arrest. I called the police to take custody of the felon, and the police started building a case against me for disturbing the peace. I sent notice and demands to the police officers and the chief of police, the town attorney, the judge. The town of Florence sent their straw man a summons. I attached the summons to a notice and demand, and the notice and demand to an affidavit of criminal complaint, and then recorded it and sent them a copy. I sent notice and demands to the Pinal County Sheriff, the Maricopa County Sheriff, the Casa Grande Chief of Police, the Arizona Attorney General, the Chief Judge of the Arizona Supreme Court, and the Phoenix Chief of Police, and more. Sent a bunch of them out. They sent a bounty hunter to my work. And the significance of that is that I was working at the airport in Phoenix. And what happened is, I was on a Friday. It was on Memorial Day weekend of 2005. And they want to get you in jail for 3 days because the IMF gives them $70,000, right? So I was, my coworkers, I went to lunch, and I came back from lunch, and my coworkers said, there's a big guy here looking for you. So then what happened was I left work early that day, and I was driving out of the parking lot, and there was a yellow van driving in there, past me, and it was all caged in inside, right? It was a bounty hunter. And the significance of that is I had served the police and the county sheriff, and none of them would touch it with a 10-foot pole. They had to send a bounty hunter. That's the power of this stuff, I'm telling you. Anytime I serve one of these on a judge, if I'm involved in a lawsuit where they're going after me, and I'll serve it on the judge, the prosecutor, next time, guaranteed. Different judge, different prosecutor. Guaranteed. Again, it's like every time that kind of stuff will happen. If you because that judge and that prosecutor, they can't touch it anymore.
Yeah, let's talk about the bounty hunter still.
Well, and so what happened was I left work early that day, and I was driving, and I was already preparing a lawsuit. Okay, I took a week's vacation, and it was Memorial Day weekend, right? Monday's a holiday. So Tuesday, I filed a lawsuit and got a case number, and then I sent the Chief Judge of the Supreme Court a notice and demand, and I went through all of the stuff that I'd done, and I said, there's a criminal racketeering enterprise operating on the town of Florence, and they had sent their hired tuck looking for me under a warrant for the arrest of their strawman vessel, and I demanded that she quash the warrant for the arrest of their strawman vessel because, quote, we all know that the corporate commercial agents, the police in brackets, are too stupid to tell the difference between a strawman vessel and a sovereign living soul. That's exactly what I told her. And what happened is and then furthermore, and this is important, because when you file a lawsuit, if you can show that an act in furtherance of the conspiracy after you file a lawsuit took place, then that is very powerful for your lawsuit. And I said, furthermore, Chief Judge, I filed a lawsuit and you were named in it. And the case number is, and I give her the case number, and you will be served with it soon enough. But if you fail to quash the warrant for the strawman vessel, it'll be further proof of your dereliction of duty to regulate your subordinates. And she didn't quash the warrant, okay, because the warrant is actually still out there, okay? But that bounty hunter never came back to my work. Nobody ever bothered me at my work. But every once in a while, like I got in a car accident in Arizona, and the warrant came up. And it was in the county, okay? This is the town of Florence where this happened, which is the county seat for Pinal County. And I got in a car accident in Casa Grande, which is also in Pinal County. It's about maybe 15 miles away from Florence, 15, 20 miles away. And it's the Pinal County Sheriff takes care of both places, right? Pinal County Sheriff is the county sheriff of Pinal County, and they came to the accident. And I told him I didn't have a driver's license. I told him I don't have a driver's license. There's no such thing as a driver's license under Texas law. I got court cases to talk about it. And what happened is one of the sergeant for the county sheriff showed up, and he saw that, and he says to the deputy sheriff, he says, well, I guess there's no such thing as a driver's license under Texas law. And so, anyways, so he was helping me. The sergeant was. You see what I'm saying? So that's the power of the county sheriff. I'm telling you, the county sheriffs are powerful.
Now, there's no law for a license in Texas. How did you say that again?
There's no such thing as a driver's license under Texas law.
Yeah,
well, think about it.
Any law that I'm aware of.
Think about it. There isn't in Arkansas either. Okay? What's happening is the license is for U.S. citizens. So it's not really Arkansas law.
Right.
Okay? It's federal law in Arkansas when you understand what's going on. You see what I'm saying?
So where can we find
The District of Columbia, the boundaries expand. What?
Sure.
No, I was just going to ask like where I could find the Arkansas law that says we don't need the driver's license.
Well, there's not necessarily going to be one.
He's saying that they're basing it on the federal law, U.S., right, for U.S. citizens.
No,
I
this
can
is
show
actually
you-
Texas law that says this. There's actually
Well,
Texas
that's what I'm saying.
law.
That's right. I don't know where you're going to find it.
I've got it. We got it from Kerry. I do have it.
I keep having to remind you guys, you don't need an Arkansas law. If there's one state in the entire United States has a law, you declare full faith and credit.
That's under the Articles
Okay,
of
so
Confederation.
I could still cite the Texas law in here.
Or California,
Okay.
don't matter.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Whatever is a higher standard,
You're-
you know, if you're right, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Now that I know that, then I won't worry
you
about
got to know that stuff. You know, if you're going to get in this law business, you got to know that any law.
That is under the Articles of Confederation.
it. Right.
Okay,
Article
so-
4, right?
No, I'm not sure off the top of my head, but I don't believe it's Article 4. But there is a.
Was it 27?
I don't think there's that many articles in the Articles of
You read
Confederation.
it earlier when you were.
I know. We were
Well,
talking
that was the
about
article I was
They
thinking of,
said
number 4, the inhabitants.
Yeah, maybe
not
8. It was.
the-
There's not that
You
many
can word
articles
search
under the Articles.
Just
Okay.
do the articles and word search.
Anyways, so after my vacation, I went to work, and nobody ever came looking for me again. The Attorney General responded for the Chief Judge in the lawsuit, because that's the way it works, okay? It was an Assistant Attorney General. And the Assistant Attorney General said it's perfectly appropriate that I petition the Chief Judge to get the warrant crashed. Okay? Well, they didn't really quash it, but they definitely got them off my back. Anyways, on the 11th of May 2009, I received a photo radar ticket from the Arizona Department of Public Safety, and I wasn't even driving my truck. It was my son driving my truck. And I rejected their offer of contract, and I sent them notice and demands to the court, the judge, and the mayor, and everything disappeared. In December 2009, I was in a car accident, and I was telling you about that. Okay? A lady made an illegal left turn. The county sheriff came. It was hauling a U-Haul behind it, and it was like I had to call U-Haul and tell them to come get their trailer because it was unusable, undrivable, untravelable, unmovable. And the county sheriff came, and they pulled up that warrant. And I heard him talking on the radio because I used a passport. I gave him a passport. So they pulled up that warrant, and I heard him talking about it on the radio. And the county sheriff said, well, we're not going to arrest you, but you need to take care of that warrant. And the same thing happened another time. I was in Arizona. I was at it's in southern Benson, Arizona. It's on I-10 in southern Arizona going, it's in southeast Arizona. Anyways, I had this this DPS officer stop me. And he pulled up the warrant. And he was laughing. He was laughing about it. He thought it was a joke. He said, but they don't want to extradite. Well, and that's what they said in Pinal County too. When I was in Pinal County and they pulled up that warrant, and I was the Pinal County sheriff, this is the sheriff for Pinal County, I was like 20 miles away from Florence, right? And yet on the radio they said, well, we don't want to extradite. Why would they extradite from Pinal County to the town of Florence?
They don't.
Well, and that's
They
my
have
point.
to.
So they're basically saying, we don't want this guy.
We don't want him. You keep him. Let him go.
Yeah. So I basically laid a foundation to the point that they didn't want to talk to me. This warrant, they couldn't do anything about it.
We have to figure out how we can quash warrants.
Yeah, I agree. But anyways, so now also my son Nelson used to drive my truck sometimes. He's married and lives in Florida now, but he was, when he was in high school, and he'd get stopped by the cops. The cop would say, who owns this vehicle? And they say, oh, my dad, and he'd never get a ticket. On the 22nd of February 2010, the Arizona Department of Safety sent their straw man a photo radar ticket. Oh, and check out my contact information is sovereigntyinternational.wordpress.com is my blog. My website is sovereigntyinternational.fyi. My email address is engineerwin@yahoo.com. My Facebook community page has been deleted due to censorship on the part of Facebook. And I have a private group on Facebook that I don't even go there. Facebook, as it has been, it's going to be another MySpace before too long, in my opinion. So I don't even go there. But I have a friend of mine that's babysitting that group. It's got like 17,000 members, but I hardly ever go there. And there's really not that much activity for 17,000 members, too. Anyways, my Yahoo private group is called Administrating-Your-Public-Servants. My Google private group is called Administrating-Your-Public-Servants. Follow me on Twitter at EngineerWin. Follow me on Steemit. And I have a BitChute profile, but BitChute won't allow uploads more than 500 megabytes, and a lot of my videos are bigger than that. So I don't even, it's got some of my videos there, but I don't even pay much attention to it. And then I got a Patreon channel too, Sovereignty International again. So I sent notice and demands to the, this was back to this, okay, 2010. They sent me a photo radar ticket. I sent notice and demands to the DPS officer, the Director of Public Safety, the Attorney General, and the Judge. I filed a criminal complaint against all of them for perjury of oath, treason, and sedition to the Constitution. They canceled the photo radar program. Serious. I'll show you. But again, I have no proof that it was anything I did.
No.
Okay. Arizona Attorney General Terry Goddard is no longer in office. He was replaced by Tom Horn, a former judge, and they sent me notice that they're canceling the straw man's driver's license. Knock yourself out. This is the thing that I got from the Justice Court. This was the cover letter. We've received correspondence. This is a criminal complaint. Okay, regarding your affidavit of criminal complaint, your request is denied. Okay, that's the first page. This is the second page.
What request?
Well, they're calling it that, but that's okay. Get a load of this. This is what they sent me. payment schedule and coupons, okay? So they're wanting $251, but it says here, read an initial. Matter of fact, I think I got this up closer. I do. Get a load of this. It says, read an initial, and they want $251, and where it says, I understand the failure to comply with this payment order may result in issue a warrant for my arrest and possible imprisonment until a fine is paid and or suspension of my driver's license. They scribbled that out. And then, a warrant for your arrest may be issued by the court. If arrested, you will be taken to jail and held until you post a bond or see the judge. Additional applicable fees may be added without notice. That's scribbled out too. And so the only thing that they're saying here is driving is a privilege and can be suspended. Go ahead, take it. I don't care. I don't need it. And the only time I use, actually, the only reason, see, Arizona is kind of nice in a way.
You gotta have it to get your insurance.
Huh?
You gotta have it to get your insurance.
No, you don't. No, in Texas they actually advertise that we'll sell you insurance without a driver's license.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I thought you had to have insurance before you can get a license. Because you have to.
Well, to register your vehicle, you got to have insurance.
Well, okay, that's what I meant. The registration.
Yeah, but my vehicle's not registered.
But you don't need to get a license.
It's got a homemade plate on it, right?
Right.
Okay. So, anyways, so what was I talking about before I got so rudely interrupted?
We're looking at the letter.
Ruthie, I'm sorry.
The middle thing in the letter.
Sorry.
The middle thing in
We
the
were
letter
looking at that.
they did.
Right. The only reason I use a driver's license if I have to rent a car. Okay. Otherwise, I put it in my briefcase and it's locked up. I never even carry it with me. Okay. They'll never find it. It's locked up. There's a combination. It's put away. I don't even carry the
Doesn't use
briefcase.
his last name. You don't
Sorry?
use your last name.
The only thing I give them is my common law ID or my NSEA ID or my Republic of Texas ID. Doesn't
Yeah.
have a date of birth.
And we've rented with our ID, the independent grand jury ID.
Right.
And didn't you rent with your Cherokee?
You've rented a car with that?
Mm-hmm.
We
Yeah,
rented
we
rented
rented
from
at-
U-Haul.
yeah,
But we
U-Haul,
could have
yeah.
been a car. It could have been anything.
Really?
but
You
we
rented a
rented
U-Haul with your
With a
NSEA? No driver's license?
Not,
No.
Well, we have with NSEA. It was.
Yeah, sometimes we have with that.
What's
Tribal
that
car.
car rental? Like Interstate or
Enterprise?
Enterprise?
Enterprise, yeah.
Okay, that really you use that to rent a car?
Yeah, but you got to understand, it's all individual.
Every-
I've also
every
been turned
company's
down.
individual.
Yeah.
So
I've
it's
been
all
turned
in
down.
Some owners will and some owners won't because they're all.
You don't have this
individual.
is that
Right.
disease?
No,
Yeah.
there is no this and that. It's all individual. But now, I have a lawsuit, and if they turn me down, well, I just serve them on the spot. They got
Right,
21 days to respond.
Y'all know what
No.
this is that disease is? I did this and that happened, so therefore this is that. I don't have this is that
It don't
disease anymore.
work.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Don't work
I-
like
That's why I say that I can't prove that this is what happened, but it's amazing how it happened.
Yeah.
You don't have this is that disease either.
We have stuff happen with us all the time with the same thing.
Yeah, it's just sometimes but it's great, and other times it's
Coincidental.
not.
Yeah.
Right.
Is it?
But now I'm
See
prepared to
judges
where I'm just going, if
stepping
they
down.
reject me, I'm going to sue them on the spot, sir.
'Cause you
Well, you got to pick your battles. I mean, you can sue everybody, and you got to pick your battles.
You know, well, it's all about money.
Oh, it is.
When I'm suing
It
with
is.
my lawsuit, I get
Yeah.
money. At the end of the day, I'm going to get money. It may be a month from now, maybe a year from now, but sooner or later.
This is the thing they sent me that where they're talking about canceling the driver's license. They never did, by the way.
They never did.
No,
I'm
they
not
just
surprised.
threatened
Said they
it.
were
They
going.
threatened
And
it.
this is where they shut down the speed cameras on the freeways.
Yeah.
How much time in between?
Well, this was July 16, 2010, right? This was July 20th, 2010. This was dated June 17th, 2010. And the whole thing started in February of 2010. So it's pretty close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because I had to make up the
Sure,
criminal
it's connected.
complaints, I had to serve them, et cetera, et cetera. It takes time to do that stuff.
Yep.
At least 30 days for them to...
Expires 20.
In July 2010, the city of Lethbridge police stopped me, gave me their straw man a ticket for no driver's license. There's no requirement in Alberta for a man to get a driver's license. I filed 3 criminal complaints against them and then filed a petition of right in the Queen's Bench with the criminal complaints attached. The perjurer on the bench entered a plea for the straw man and set it down for trial. I told him in my criminal complaints I don't take orders from criminals, and I'm not appearing in your show trial. And I didn't. They convicted their straw man and fined us $172, the same as the ticket. I called up the clerk and asked if they'd had a warrant, and they said no. They said it would be handled by the motor vehicle department. And that's what they do in Alberta. Is in the citation in Alberta, it says if you fail to respond to this offense notice as required by law by the apparent state indicated above, or if you plead not guilty and fail to appear in person or by agent in your trial date, you'll be deemed not to dispute the charge, and you may be convicted of the offense in your absence without a hearing. And then it goes on, if you're convicted, until the fine plus any late payment fees are paid in full, you'll not be allowed to obtain or renew a driver's license or motor vehicle license in Alberta. Well, I don't want their motor vehicle license or driver's license anyway, so
Right.
that's their only remedy.
They ever send you signed papers, or are they usually not signed?
No, never.
That's why I just
right.
got one from the finance of our people.
Yeah.
Trying to say I owe taxes.
Yeah.
I haven't paid income tax since 1994.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, actually, Kerry Zolman has a great procedure for income tax. You ought to.
Yeah, I was going to tell him about that. He just showed me the paperwork today, and I haven't talked to him in a while.
That's
I've been
it's.
doing this for years. So.
You'll like what Kerry has to say.
Oh, it's
We
great.
need to
You get the
Winston
tax court to
trial.
give you a letter
I mean,
saying
we
you don't
need
have
to
jurisdiction, or
get
they don't
Winston
have
trial.
jurisdiction.
That'd be a big
Okay.
case.
And so you get it from
Kerry
them.
called me today about that.
Anyways,
Kerry called me today about that.
He did.
this is proof they know they have no authority. This is proof that it's nothing more than a commercial transaction. In July of 2010, matter of fact, I heard about a guy in Alberta that wouldn't even stop for the cops. They'd turn on the cherries, and he'd be speeding or whatever, and he wouldn't even stop. He'd just keep on going. They'd follow him for a while, and then they just turn off the cherries and go about their business. And the reason is, when you understand the law, it comes down to, remember we talked about probable cause. If they don't have probable cause to arrest you,
Right.
they can't.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So they're hoping you'll voluntarily stop for them. If you don't voluntarily stop, then they have no remedy.
Nowadays, they don't even have cherries. They got blue lights, which is not emergency lights.
Well, it's still considered emergency lights. I'd still call it emergency
I'd
light.
still ask them, like,
Yeah.
what's the emergency?
Yeah, that's exactly. What's the emergency? And so again, that's what it really comes down to is probable cause, because the law is the same in Alberta and Canada as it is here. Okay, it's all common law of England, and it comes down to probable cause. What's your probable cause for stopping me? And if they don't have probable cause, then you just go on. In July 2010, I was on my way back from a private information share in Vernon, BC, and I got stopped by the Calgary City Police. And then in November 28, 2010, I was stopped by the Alberta Sheriff. And again, these are stops, and in hindsight, I shouldn't have even stopped. I just keep on going, and they have no remedy. They can't stop me. If they do, I sue their butt off. And I think they know that's what's coming. And especially if I have my own private plate. You see what I'm saying? And that's the problem, is too many people,
It's not under their jurisdiction.
they
It's private
respect the
play.
pigs, and they don't deserve respect. If there's a breach of the peace, then they have a right to stop you. Otherwise, they got nothing to say.
What about when they take out their guns and start shooting you?
Well, I guess
Make sure you got one
Shoot
on
back.
you yourself.
in Canada you don't.
Don't
they
get
don't want
hit.
you. They don't want you having arms. That's one of the things. I guess they don't want you to be able to defend themselves. They want to be able to murder you and get away with it.
Right.
But I think that's one reason why they don't pursue it. You see what I'm saying? And again, it comes down to the notice and demand. You notice them, and if you have it set up properly, then and you tell them, and you tell their boss, okay, or the commissioner. Like they all have bosses, and you tell their boss that you're put into Estoppel. And if one of your subordinates stops me or unlawfully arrests me, then it's because you intend it to happen too, and you're going to be personally liable as well. And you sue the. You see what I'm saying? You build a case, and that kind of thing. You see what I'm saying?
I like the preemptive nature of it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's at least 2 and possibly more classes of citizenship in all common law countries. The government has made perfectly good laws that are technically correct 99% of the time. because we've given our public servants and the government the right to presume certain things, the burden is now on us to defeat those presumptions, and again, because it's under martial law, right? It's a military dictatorship. And so, to some extent, they presume you're one of the slaves. They know there's two classes. I even had Calgary police talk to me about being sovereign and all that stuff. We know you're sovereign, you know. They wanted to ask me questions and stuff like that, see, about sovereigns, you know. Anyways, so they know about it. It's the same thing applies in Canada.
They wanted you to toss them,
Who knows?
They're trying to
Who knows?
incriminate you.
toss
They
them
weren't-
some nuggets.
They
Yeah.
weren't, you know, I don't know, but they
Anything
were.
you say can and will.
So anyways, the best way to defeat any presumptions to go on the attack, presumptions are taken in martial law. The fact they're presuming anything is proof that you're in a martial law jurisdiction, and it's also proof they don't have any authority. Right now, we've provided the government reason to believe we're not sovereign. The government is operating on that assumption based on prima facie evidence that we ourselves provided. If you think about it, right? You provide them with the evidence.
And to assume is to bear false witness.
Right.
Because we
Qualified immunity protects government officials from liability for civil damages insofar as their conduct does not violate clearly established statutory or constitutional rights of which a reasonable person would have known. Qualified immunity defense fails if public officer violates clearly established right because a reasonably competent official should know the law governing his conduct. So you can pierce right through, you lay the foundation, you can pierce right through any immunity they may think they have. A plaintiff who seeks damages for violation of constitutional rights or statutory rights may overcome the defendant's official qualified immunity only by showing that those rights were clearly established at the time of the conduct at issue. Okay, I served him this. He's supposed to know. I served it to his boss. Okay, and his hired thugs and his boss are now responsible. See what I'm saying? I have exclusive content available on my website and on Patreon. My website has 2 subscription levels, and I accept cryptocurrencies. $29.99 a year for the videos only, $49.99 a year for the videos plus unlimited consultations. Now, the unlimited consultations have their limit. In other words, I'm not a liar. Therefore, I can tell you what I would do under certain circumstances and where to find the forms. But you know, that there is a limit, you know, and I don't babysit, you know. 14 emails in a half an hour is going to be a little much, you know, and so we're all supposed to be mature adults. I'll help you. I'll tell you what I would do under a certain circumstance and where to find the forms. But it's one thing that I don't babysit. Okay, it's we all got into this because of our own ignorance. And I'll help you to find the information you need to know, and I'll tell you what I would do. But you know, we need to, you know, accept responsibility and do our own homework. It's we get into these situations because of our own ignorance. And Mark Passio says ignorance is actually a compound word. You know, the root word, I should say, of ignorance is ignore. And so we're there because of our own ignorance. And so part of our learning process is to you know, find out, and I'll help you to find out what's going on and how to deal with it. But again, you know, we need to, in other words, I get people that ask me, well, should I make it notarized or should I have witnesses? Well, that's a personal preference, actually. Witnesses work fine. It depends on what you want to do. I mean, why should I tell them whether they should have a notarized or witnesses? Either one of them works just fine. Yeah. You know.
I like this little disclaimer on this on this videos I've been looking at. It says, "I'm self-governing, as you should too." Also known as, "Do not contact me for advice."
Well, and again, I'm not a lawyer, so I can only tell you what I would do under a certain circumstance, and where to find the forms.
Well,
anyways. So the only power that these New World Order Satanists have over us is through fraud and deception. My agenda is to expose it for all our benefit, but I cannot fight all the battles, and that's the reason I do what I do. We need more people being on point, bringing up the right issues, laying the foundation, and the more people that do it, you know, it's going to help everybody. And I deliberately, like if you go in here, I talk about my plates. I don't know where it is in here. But it's probably, I mean, the thing is like, you know, 30 pages, so there's no way we're going to be able to go through it all. And I went through the important stuff about the Estoppel certificates and the good faith. You got to defeat their good faith. And that's the purpose of it. Put them into Estoppel. And then the last paragraph, I like the last paragraph because it kind of leaves on a nice note. It says, you're further notice that after saying all of this, I also want you to know that when you're operating in your official capacity as a peace officer, if you ever need me to give aid in carrying out your lawful duty, I fully comprehend my duty in that respect, and I'll be there for you anytime, any place. And then a quote under Posse Comitatus, the power of the county, the entire population of the county above the age of 15, which a sheriff may summon to his assistance in certain cases to aid him in keeping the peace and pursuing and arresting felons. And so you leave it on a good note. After you're basically, you know, tearing a strip off them, you leave them on a good note, because along with rights come responsibilities too. See what I'm saying? So I'll be there for you anytime, any place, for your lawful duty. Not for your revenue stuff, but for your lawful duty. Anyways. So there's a bunch of stuff in here that I got from Tom about vehicles, about the consumer goods that I got from Tom that talks about your vehicle, and I think that's one reason they leave me alone, because it talks about consumer goods.
Uniform Commercial Code, consumer goods?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's what they operate under. And so consumer goods on 9-109.
Yeah, that's the same one David Strait told me, 9109.
Right. There's a
Yeah, I remember I showed him the plate that I had. Is that Act? Yeah.
let me find it
Should I
here.
have that? That's-
Nine dash 109.
CC?
Parentheses one
UPC.
after the
Oh,
I
is that,
remember
is
that.
9 UCC 9? Is that prop? No, that was
It's personal or private property.
private property, right?
No, what do they call that?
UCC 9.
Right.
109.
Goods are one.
1-109?
Goods are one, consumer goods that they're bought or used primarily for personal, family, or household purposes, or equipment that they're used for business, okay? And then there's a bunch of court cases under UCC 9-109. There's a real distinction between goods purchased for personal use and those purchased for business use. The two are mutually exclusive. The classification of goods on UCC 9-109 are exclusive. Automobile purchased for transporting buyer to and from his place of employment was consumer goods. The provisions of UCC 2-316 of the Maryland UCC do not apply to sales of consumer goods, a term which includes automobiles, whether new or used, that are bought primarily for personal, family, or household uses. A vehicle not used for commercial activity is a consumer goods, and is not a type of vehicle required to be registered and use tax paid, of which the tab is evidence of the receipt of the tax.
Wow, that
Okay.
would kill out
Wow.
Arkansas.
Right.
Oh, the taxes.
Right. Right.
They tax
That's
you every
stuff
year
that,
on your car.
that's stuff that Tom got for me.
Yeah.
But you gotta sue them.
We
Yeah.
have it on our
You gotta
tax.
sue them.
Well,
Right.
actually, I think that's one reason they
we
leave
gotta
me
run,
alone.
brother.
All right, thanks for
Are
coming.
you leaving tonight?
Yes, I'm hitting the road. I want to be
Okay,
in
you be
Texas.
careful.
Yep, I will. Thank you very much. You guys take care and keep in touch.
You just know where you're at over there.
All right.
Yeah.
See ya. Take care.
That was right underneath all this stuff. I think he put this stuff on it.
No.
Right there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so
Well, his chip is in.
this
there.
is
Your
this
chip,
is
your chip is in this one.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm
he's
just going to copy the
he's gonna
files.
copy it over.
Oh,
Do you want to keep the files? I'm just going to copy them, right?
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I got more on that chip. So I just
Right.
want you to have that. So I don't know if this helps you at all, this presentation, but we sure appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, no problem. I'm glad it's a networking thing, right? Nobody knows everything, and we've got to spread the word. And the more people that do this, it helps me too,
Oh, yeah.
because then I'm less likely to get harassed.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And
I don't know, man.
See, I did this
I
all
don't
by
know.
myself
You know,
for years.
I
Nobody
did this
else
and that
was
happened.
taking
yeah, I know.
on. It's New York.
It might have something. You get
Nobody.
harassed. It might have something to do with you fucking bitch. It might.
You whore.
You whore. Might have something to do with that.
Hey, you know what's so funny is like on the reservation, nobody else would do this. You know, would go around
You
without
know-
driver's licenses or anything like that. And I went 23 years without a driver's license.
30 on mine.
Yeah.
I did 30.
And
The
I
thing
was
is, and in all fairness, you know, the First Nations are so beat up, especially by the U.S.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, in Canada, it's not as bad, but they are so beat up. There's in Canada, it's the residential schools. I mean, it's
Oh,
just
yeah.
murdering kids and stuff like that.
Residence
And so, in
schools,
a
yeah.
way, I don't blame any of them at all. They're just so beat up. I mean, what do you expect? I mean,
So that's that's interesting. You said that the Chisholm versus Georgia said the only nation was the United States of America. That's kind of audacious, and not to give the First Nations any qualifications as
Well,
being nations.
They call them domestic dependent nations under
That's part of my language.
Georgia
Where-
case. Yeah.
which files are these?
Huh?
Domestic.
Domestic dependent nations. Yeah.
Domestic.
By any chance, Glenn, do you
Yeah.
know the
Yeah.
deed
Even though the
for-
treaty
He's
says
here
not,
first.
even though the treaty says don't say anything like that, you know, that they're sovereign and